meeting. I'm Deputy First Selectman Amber Abiel. I'd like to have people stand as they are able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to turn over the remainder of chairing the meeting to Selectwoman Heather Getz.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
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 Hi, so welcome everyone. Unfortunately, our first selectman, Wendy Maxudis, is sick this evening, so I will be chairing this evening's meeting. So welcome everyone. And we will begin with our first public hearing, which is the ordinance prohibiting the use of tobacco, vaping, and cannabis products on public property. Should we have a list of speakers? Oh, okay. Do we have anyone who would like to speak at the public hearing on the cannabis? Okay, we would just like to make sure that we have a list of the names of each person who speaks with an address. Are you going to take it there?
Yeah, there's a sign-in sheet to help out with the minutes, if you can just put your name and address.
Sign a sheet of paper.
Jody?
Yeah.
So Jody, if you could come up and then each subsequent person can just sign in. So thank you, Jody. You have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, well, I know a lot of people wanna be able to smoke where they wanna smoke here. But I, for example, have asthma and it's induced by smoke. Now, if it was something that wasn't an unhealthy type of thing for others, then that would be one thing. I'd have to deal with that by getting the right medicines, keeping away from areas where people are smoking. But what I have found is that's not the case, and especially in any public places here now, it's like a free-for-all with the smoke and the cigarette smoke and anything in a tent to anything outdoors. And people are just lighting up with no regard for other adults, children, pets, and we keep having to move our chairs, move away. And it's just like, I think it's a time to address the fact that there at least has to be an area where people are allowed to do what they want, but away from the general public, because it's offensive and it's unhealthy. So I am totally against this public bit of smoking wherever you want, whenever you want, because it's outdoors. That's what I had to say.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Joan?
Joan Coe, 26 Whitcomb Drive. The issue that this ordinance is supposed to address is the health and safety of all individuals who use public property. There is a high preponderance of alcohol consumption in the Simsbury community affecting families, and the Simsbury Board of Selectmen refuses to add alcohol consumption on town property to the ordinance. Alcohol consumption on town property is a liability to the town. It appears that the addition of alcohol to the ordinance might offend a large constituency in Simsbury, although health and safety is a prime issue with alcohol consumption. Without the addition of alcohol to the ordinance, the board is not sincere in promoting the ordinance for health and safety. The second ordinance has areas of exception, designating the golf course as an exception, carving town property into segments of exception. The golf course is the playground for the special interests that refuse to have their behavior regulated, making this ordinance an insincere attempt to regulate behavior. It appears that this ordinance is difficult, if not impossible, to enforce. The ordinance appears to be a paper tiger that will only pit one person against another, signifying nothing. If the town was serious about their concerns about the health and safety of the community, they would not carve out areas of exception designating the golf course as a safe area where there is no need to regulate people's behavior. The town should use their clout to institute behavior modification by approving events without the sale and use of alcohol and not approve concerts with the use of cannabis, vaping products, and tobacco. Until the town is sincere in their efforts to protect the health and safety of the community and restrict the use of alcohol, vaping, tobacco, and cannabis on town property, the ordinance should be rejected. And all of my comments we posted on Simsbury Patch and Twitter at Joan Co. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak at the public hearing?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity. My name is David Bush. I live at 4 Catherine Lane, and I'm the chairman of Park and Rec. And I felt it was appropriate that I speak just very briefly tonight because of the fact that Park and Rec is responsible for overseeing with the Board of Selectmen the operation of the golf course. We have been charged with a very, very important duty at the golf course. We have been asked to do everything we can to maximize revenue in any way we can within the bounds of the law. And in order to do that, we cannot exclude a certain population that would either use our golf course, have a tournament at our golf course, or simply want to enjoy a cigarette or a cigar as they may at the golf course. There's a reason we said we want to have an exception. The golf course is the only revenue generating piece of public property, or open space, if you will, in the town. We don't have that if you walk on your trails. Is not a revenue generator. We are. Tax dollars. We hear time and again when we set our rates, we don't want that golf course to be a burden to the town or the taxpayers. How do we then deal with that? I do not want to exclude anybody from doing what they've done for the 50 years that we've operated this golf course, which was to allow a cigar or a cigarette out in open space. So all I simply ask is that you be reflective of the fact that this is also a revenue issue. It's a tax issue. It's not just a public policy, public safety issue that you deal with tonight. Thank you for the opportunity, and also thank you for all your service.
Thank you. Lori?
I am Lori Boyko from 15 Oakhurst Road. Miraculously, I don't have a notebook for this particular public audience. I do for the next one. I see this maybe a little bit differently than some other people do. It is a health and safety issue, but I'm not a person who feels like it's my job or your job to regulate other people's health. If they want to smoke, that's up to them. It's a free country. We're individuals. We get to make those choices. What I see government's role is balancing equal rights. One person's rights versus another person's rights. In this case, it is one person's right to smoke. It's another person's right to breathe clean air and not have to inhale that smoke. When I go out for a walk, I want to breathe in fresh air. I don't want somebody's cigarette inhaling into my lungs. And so whether that's on the golf course or whether that's on the sidewalk, if someone wants to smoke, they can go in their car, they can go in their house, they can go in their yard. But on public property that's owned by all of us, I feel like it's the town's responsibility to balance those rights. And the only way to do that equally across all properties is to prohibit the use of tobacco products, cannabis, vaping products on public property, and then let individuals have their personal rights in their personal space. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak on this public hearing? Okay, we will make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Heather, I'm sorry, before we move on, I just wanted to see if there'd be support to have our discussion and vote now, or if the board would prefer to wait till it's on the agenda. Just to allow people who've come to enjoy the rest of their evening. I'm really okay, whatever the consensus of the group is.
I don't know, Father Time, do you have a problem with that? Just leave it where it is on the agenda.
So we will now begin the public hearing for the proposed amendments to chapter 15 of the Simsbury Town Code Fair Rent Commission. Do we have anyone who's here to speak on that topic today? Joe?
Was that public audience?
No, this is for the public hearing
Oh, I'm sorry.
on the Fair
I'm not
Rent
interested.
Commission.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Lori, please come up.
Guess I should have just brought the notebook the first time. Hi, I'm Lori Boyko from 15 Oakhurst Road. And I've been a realtor for 25 years. I'm in the mortgage business. I've lived in town and I own a rental property. So I have a fair amount of knowledge in this area. I realize we've had a fair rent commission on the books, as they say, for decades, but it's been largely inactive or defunct. But in terms of resurrecting it, I have some very grave concerns. My primary issue with a rent commission is that it violates the very tenets of our three branches of government, and it intercepts the role of the judicial branch that oversees the enforcement of our laws. We currently have extensive landlord-tenant statutes in this state that very clearly dictate what landlord and tenant rights and responsibilities are. It lays out penalties for violations of those laws, and our three branches of government, built to create checks and balances, is entrusted to adjudicate disputes that arise from possible breaches of the laws. For those who may not know, our landlord-tenant laws are some of the strongest in the country in favor of the tenants, strictly limiting amounts of security deposits to no more than 2 months' rent, even if someone offers to pay a higher security for a pet or to offset bad credit. They can't. The landlord can't accept that. The security deposit is 1 month for people over a certain age or who are disabled. Security deposits must be returned within a specified period of time unless damages are clearly itemized, or a landlord can be ordered to pay double the deposit back to the tenant. The eviction process for a landlord to remove a non-paying tenant takes so long that many landlords will offer a monetary incentive to the non-paying tenant to move out, because that is cheaper than months of non-payment and the cost of an attorney. To insert a politically appointed non-judicial body into the middle of our legal system of justice defies the principles of American governance. I realize the state legislature has theoretically authorized this, but it is a very dangerous path to go down. We have fewer than the 25,000 mandated population that would require such a commission, so we really should avoid it unless and until we have no choice, which would appear to be after the 2030 census. I would in fact advocate that we remove it from our charter entirely, because it completely and utterly disrespects what America stands for. If that is not enough for you to vote no, I have a few other quick points. As written, the amendment suggests there is no cost to the town. That is factually incorrect. The statute gives rent commissions authority to engage legal services, which would in fact incur costs. And the simple act of town personnel serving as a liaison and fielding rent commission calls costs man-hours, which leads to the need to hire more people. No locally politically appointed body should hold the power to subpoena and compel to appear individual property owners or to usurp their rights to price their rent as they need to. The guidelines for determining what is fair are entirely subjective and include the owner's expenses and debt service, suggesting someone with a mortgage on their property is allowed to charge a higher rent than someone who paid cash. Fair rent even included a tenant's ability to pay as a consideration, which any licensed appraiser will tell you has absolutely no bearing on a rental property's value. Lastly, I would suggest that if we go down this road, are we gonna tell Fitzy's and Stop and Shop what they can charge me for a loaf of bread? Are we gonna tell Red Door Oil how much they can charge for oil, or are we gonna let them compete in the marketplace? Are we gonna tell the gas stations what they can charge for a gallon of gas? Or are we going to have an open market that sets these prices based on consumer supply and demand? Thank you.
Do we have anyone else here to speak on this topic? No? Okay, so we will make a motion to close the public hearing on the proposed amendment to chapter 15 of Simsbury Town Code Fair Rent Commission.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The public hearing is closed. Thank you to everyone who came to speak. We will move on now to public audience. Do we have anyone to speak for public audience? Yes, sir?
Good evening. I am Brian Catino. I am a resident of Simsbury. I live at 3 The Mews, Simsbury, Connecticut. I'm here to talk about something different than a public hearing, Route 185, our favorite topic. And if you're like me and you're a commuter in and out of this town, a few weeks ago, October 24th, there was a major traffic impediment. There was utility work going on Route 185 that caused traffic to be constrained from 2 lanes to 1 lane for 3 days, the 24th, 25th, and 26th. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a huge artery that we have in our town. So I asked this, I have 2 charges for this body. One, a call to action to investigate the utility work that took place there and how that was managed and communicated out to residents. And 2, to establish a committee that looks at how can we better communicate to our residents and our stakeholders of this town. So let me start on the 185. If you're not familiar with Route 185, it starts at Hartford Road in Hot Meadow, where Abigail's is, connects us into the greater Hartford area. Used by a lot of commuters, in this case, hundreds that were delayed. The impact was folks were delayed up to an hour or more, going in and out of our town that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. These things happen, traffic accidents and maintenance work takes place, and I'm not saying anything against investing in our infrastructure. We need to continue to invest in our infrastructure. But how it was done and how folks were informed, that's the gap. And that's what I asked this body to investigate, even if it was out of our jurisdiction. I think where the work took place was at the top of the mountain, and that might be in Bloomfield. Might have been a state road, so the Department of Transportation from the great state of Connecticut, or his utility company. Please partner with these other municipalities, agencies, and utility areas to understand 2 things. One, did they follow the policies and procedures to do the work that they did at Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday? And if they did, are those policies and procedures good enough to communicate out when we have an impact? Like I said, people missed doctor's appointments, missed school, missed work. People had impacts, and I know accidents happen, but this is preventable. We can do better. Which leads to option number 2, my call to action number 2. How can we establish a group, citizens, professionals, that looks at the tools and channels to communicate to our residents and our stakeholders when things like this happen? This is 2023. We have the technology, and I know not everyone uses a cell phone, I know not everyone has connections to the internet, but we have the technology to reach a massive amount of people in near real time. I don't wanna inundate people, I don't wanna overdo the communication, Lord knows that it's very hard to make everybody happy, you know this better than I. But what I ask is we look at, do we have the right tools and communications to when we have traffic issues like this or other work that's happening in our town, that residents and stakeholders can look at the right authoritative channel to understand what's going on. For me, I had to turn to social media to understand what was going on during that week, and others had to as well. Instead of hearing hearsay, which is what a lot of people felt, how can we get an authoritative message? So I appreciate your time, I appreciate everyone's time here. Please look into what happened for Route 185, and we can prevent this from happening again and have a positive change. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Pat Weisbrick, and I live at 3 Lenora Drive for the last 39.5 years. I'd like to talk this evening about affordable housing. As we know, we have a problem with affordable housing. The problem isn't the housing. The problem is the word affordable. The state has redefined what affordable is. Affordable in the conventional definition is something that's reasonably priced. What they have done, the state, and that includes obviously our state representatives, have voted in a poison pill into 830G. And the poison pill is the 40-year deed that's required. As a result of the 40-year deed, most of the housing that the conventional definition of affordable would apply to is not allotted in 4.8%. Now, I've done an analysis, I believe all of you got it. I just am going to skip around a bit, but I did a survey of the town. I got sheets from the assessor's office that itemized the number of apartments we have, the number of condos we have, the number of PUDs, and for those of you who don't know what a PUD is, it's a planned urban development. Anyway, through my calculations, which we can go through if you have a question on it, but of the unaccounted for housing, we have about 14.5% of affordable housing that is not even considered in what the town is being charged with. And of course, with showing 4.8%, it leaves us subject to towns narratives like the elitists and the racists and this, that, and the other thing. When in fact, we have a very, very good stock of housing that is affordable. So my call to action, as the gentleman just said, my call to action is for this town. We're already being sued by Vessel. My call to action is one of two prongs. Number one, get an amendment to 830G to grandfather in what has been built in the past, and it is significant for our town, or overturn 830G altogether. But right now, with Silverman having the 580 housing units on the table here, and with 10%, if we continue with 830G, with 10%, you can keep adding it and adding it and adding it. And we can add 100 million units and get to 9.999% the way they're calculating it. So, as the old joke in Maine goes about the tourist asking for the directions, the old Maine guy says, well, Sonny, I guess we can't get there from here. And that's exactly where we are with affordable housing. So I'm just calling the select board to action, the planning commission to action, our representatives to action, to either get it grandfathered in or get rid of it, because we have plenty of affordable housing. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Joan?
Joan Coe, 26 Wickham Drive. Now that the elections are over and several new candidates are on the Board of Selectmen, I would hope that the members would represent the people of the town and not the special interests. The unwritten rules of not engaging people in public audience have not been followed. Members of the board have showed disrespect to the people who come before the board, who are not members of special interest groups, while others have unlimited discussions with the board. Steve Antonio will be serving as a member of the Board of Selectmen. As a long-term resident of Simsbury, owner of several businesses, and a commercial property owner, the Ethics Board should review, as they did with Mike Payne, for any conflicts that could come before the board, that he would be required to recuse himself from participation. This should be a proactive opinion as opposed to filing a complaint after the fact. The referendum vote on cannabis sale in Simsbury was rejected with an overwhelming vote against the sale of Simsbury. It appears that Simsbury residents were against adding additional mind-altering drugs into the community. Cannabis, alcohol, vaping products, and tobacco should all be considered addictive substances that should not be condoned by the board with the use on town property. Exclusions and sales of these substances on town property should be rejected. Interim Town Manager Lee Erdman will start the process of developing the 2024 spending budget. All ARPA funding for this that was approved in 2023 that added additional personnel to the budget should be eliminated. The Board of Education received $450,000 for a 2-year pilot program for social workers. This should be eliminated. Social Services received $250,000 for a youth services social worker. That should be eliminated. The Police Department received $70,000 for a police service dog. That too should be eliminated. It appears that the selection of Officer Jameson Ball in charge of the service dog placed his promotion in jeopardy to sergeant, since a replacement would have to be chosen if the service dog position remained open. This is a list of promotions to sergeant: Tim Russell, Tim May, Justin Galducci, Jameson Ball, Todd Cushman, Michael Lantier. All the officers on the list were qualified through a rigorous testing and interview process. Tim Russell and Tim May were both promoted to sergeant. Chief Bolter skipped over Justin Galducci and Jameson Ball to promote Todd Cushman. Todd Cushman's replacement as SRO is Michael Lantier. With all the officers especially qualified, who were the two officers skipped? Why were the two officers skipped over on the list of qualified officers? I would like to report that Chief Bolter has initiated a babysitting service within the police department. This department requires no funding for access to police incident reports. Lieutenant Brad Chase has been assigned to the position of headmaster of the service. Chief Bolter is a micromanager of the police department, has selected me to be the sole patron of this service. However, Lieutenant Chase has other full-time duties designated to him and is not always available. Therefore, I presently send my inquiries as an FOI request, which is time-consuming to receive this information. All the inquiries could be reviewed with a phone call to the records room without these draconian measures. Chief Bolter's babysitting service is an example of the unrealistic controls put on people that he feels is a threat to his management and control of the police department. The instituting of a babysitting service within the police department appears to be a violation of the police contract. Absent from the contract negotiation, it appears that this is a breach of contract by Chief Bolter and should be, quote, just cause for an immediate termination of Chief of Police Department. Chief Bolter not only runs the babysitting service, but replies to and institutes emails, phone calls, and texts 24/7 from early morning to late at night. This management style is destructive, causing low morale within the police department, and one of the reasons for the no confidence vote.
30
The
seconds,
records room
Joan.
where the information is stored can be accessed by anyone during office hours, with one exception, me. The employees are highly trained. However, Chief Bolter is concerned that public information is available to everyone, has mean that my inquiry should be filtered through Lieutenant Chase.
5
15
seconds.
Joan.
And then it is alleged reported to Chief Bolter. There should be a competitive.
And that's all she wrote, folks. Joan, thank you. My term is over.
Posted on Simsbury Patch, Twitter, Joe.
Joan, that's it, that's 5. We're all done.
Thank you for your cooperation.
12 years.
Good evening, my name is Ellen Gilbert, I live at 126 Hot Meadow Street, Unit 3E. In support of what Pat was saying about whatever we can do about 830G. This past weekend, I spoke with a woman I've known for a few years who lives here, who lived here in Simsbury and could no longer afford to stay in Simsbury. Her financial advisor told her to move. She moved to an affordable housing apartment in Farmington. And she has had floods for 3 years in a row now. Now, with 830G, they say that the only reason it can be turned down is safety. But this woman has had floods in her living quarters for 3 years. I think that there is another reason to support going against 830G because it's not good for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else for public audience today? No? Okay, so we will move on now to recognition of our outgoing board members. We have 4 board members who will be leaving the board, and our town manager and first selectman on behalf of them would like to thank all of our board members for all of their years of service on this board. I in particular have really enjoyed working with all of you and getting to know you, and I'm sure that with our dedication to Simsbury, we will cross paths and work together at some point soon on another initiative in Simsbury, because I know we're engaged in other aspects. But to start, we will start with Amber. And our first selectman, Wendy Maxudis, and our town manager, Lee Erdman, put together a proclamation for each of you. So we would first like to, I guess what it was first, we'll move effective November 13th, 2023 to congratulate Deputy First Selectwoman Amber Abule on her tenure on the Board of Selectmen from 2021 to present. Further move to express the board's gratitude to Ms. Abule for her service to her community.
With that,
Second?
Second.
And for discussion, I'll read your proclamation. So proclamation for Amber Abule in recognition of her service to the Board of Selectmen. Whereas Amber Abule is being recognized today for her term on the Board of Selectmen from December 2021 through December 2023. Whereas Amber Abule served as Deputy First Selectman as selected by First Selectman Wendy Maxudis from December 2019 through December 2021. And whereas Amber Abule was a member of Personnel Subcommittee, and whereas Amber Abule was a member of the Finance Subcommittee where we worked together to find appropriate uses for the American Rescue Plan Act funding, and whereas Amber Abule served as liaison to Aging and Disability, the Housing Authority, Zoning Commission, and whereas Amber Abule led the Simsbury Community Cleanup Day, held the last 2 years on Earth Day. And now, therefore, Wendy Maxudis, First Selectman of the Town of Simsbury, and Lee Erdman, Interim Town Manager, thank Amber Abule for her service to the Town of Simsbury and wish her well in her next tenure. Is there any discussion, anything you'd like to say?
Are we gonna make remarks after each one?
yeah, we can do
Okay.
it after if you want.
Alright, so I jotted down a few things. First of all, I would like to say I'm just really happy to be here tonight. It's been a privilege and an honor to serve on the Board of Selectmen. I would like to thank our exemplary town staff, professionals who day in and day out go above and beyond for this town. It has really been a pleasure to work with so many of you on many different projects, and I know that you will continue to give your very best service to the town. I have enjoyed working with each of you on the board, and Lee, it's been a pleasure to get to work with you as interim town manager, and Tom, you've really just stepped up, you know, to take on the role of deputy town manager and have been doing a great job. I think you know, board of selectmen come and go, their political positions, but our professional staff truly are the ones that keep our town government operating at a very professional level day in and day out. Finally, I'd like to say that I came to this board out of a desire to serve our community, and the past few weeks especially have shown me what a special community that we live in. I look forward to continuing to serve Simsbury and through my volunteer service going forward, and I'm sure that I'll have the opportunity to work with so many of you again. So thank you so much.
Your impact on this board has been disproportionate to your time on this board, and I think about some of the things that you advocate for. The money that we were able to invest in our housing authority, I think, happened in large part thanks to your advocacy. Among other things where that are chronically underinvested and seriously in need of funding. Those are the things you spoke up for, and that's going to be remembered for a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah, Amber, I was skeptical when you got elected, as you are a member of the other party. But I have grown to not only respect you, but to count you as a friend. You and I don't agree on many national issues, but we always compromise. And I hope that folks can take that lesson that you've been able to work with the likes of me and others to show that our community is more important than any individual political ideology. So thank you for helping me learn and grow and respect issues that I didn't always appreciate, and I look forward to serving with you in another capacity in the future.
Thank you, Sean.
Amber, so I guess we go Amber, you.
It's a roast or something.
I know, well, you know it's gonna come there, it's coming there. So I do echo just one of the last things I just wanna make sure, Amber, that you know that. One of the things I cherished most about you was we've had many private conversations, and you were effective in a number of those of sort of talking me off the ledge when I wanted to go hard at some people and some issues. And you talked me into the voice of reason, and said, often shared that, passion can come out by being just a bit wiser and more judicious with some of your words, Chris. And I will not forget you. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
And Amber, I'd just like to say how much I really enjoyed working with you. We've been fortunate enough to work on the library board and now here. And I know we also have some overlapping community service initiatives that I know we'll continue to work on together. So thank you for your service to this board.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
And I'm
now,
the fastest one. Wait till we get to some of the rest of these fellows.
and now we will move on to Mr. Askham. So we will move effective November 13th, 2023 to congratulate Selectman Sean Askham on his tenure on the Board of Selectmen from 2011 to present. Further move to express the board's gratitude to Mr. Askham for his service to his community. I'll second. For discussion, we have a proclamation. Whereas Sean Askham is being recognized today for his term on the Board of Selectmen from December 2011 through December 2023, and whereas Sean Askham served as Deputy First Selectman as selected by First Selectman Eric Wellman from December 2019 through December 2021, and whereas Sean Askham served as longstanding chair of the Public Safety Subcommittee and provided the leadership needed through the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas Sean Askham was a member of the Personnel Subcommittee, and whereas Sean Askham served as liaison and member of many commissions and work groups in his years on the boards, and whereas Sean Askham was a member of the Town Manager Search Committee during the transition from the old form of government to our current Selectman Town Manager, resulting in the hiring of our first Town Manager. And now therefore, Wendy Maxdudas, first selectman of the town of Simsbury, and Lee Erdman, interim town manager, thank Sean Askham for his service to the town of Simsbury and wish him well in his next venture.
So in 12, that's actually my first proclamation, so I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been here a long time, as Chris calls me Father Time. I wouldn't be here without my parents showing me the way. Mom and Dad are here tonight. And I wouldn't be up here without their guidance. Mom was on zoning, Dad was on the Board of Finance, as we all know, for a very long time. And served this community passionately and with the community first. And they taught me that you work with everybody to do what's right, even when it's hard. We've done a lot of hard things up here. We do a lot of important things up here that folks might not appreciate, but we've also made a number of mistakes over the years too, and we've had to work through that. And it's been a very humbling but rewarding experience to sit up here with all of you and the almost half dozen other folks that I've served with, some of which are up on that wall up there and some still serving. And I thank each one of you for your volunteerism and for your passion. Obviously my friend Sherry's here tonight as well, who I served with. For those that don't know, it's hard to put your name on the ballot. It's even harder to sit up here and hear some of the things that are said or take up some of the issues, because what we believe in personally versus what's right for the community might not be the same thing. And we have to figure out how to balance that. And I think everybody that I've served with takes that very seriously. Town staff is the most underappreciated group in this community by far. Our town staff runs this community tirelessly, thanklessly, and with such professionalism that most folks have no idea how lucky we are. There are so many members of town staff here today, department heads and other folks. They're the real heroes of this community. They're the ones that get it done every day. We're up on camera, we're up on TV, we're the ones that get quoted. But these folks are the ones that do all the actual work to make sure that this is a AAA rated community, that this is a community that we want to raise our kids in, that we want to retire in, we want to play in, we want to care about things like open space, like diversity and inclusion, like preservation and Parks and Rec, policing, all the things that we care about in this community are made possible by all of our town staff. So for those at home, for those here, please take a moment and thank them over your time, because we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them. And last but not least, my daughters are here tonight. They're here for a very special reason, because I think it's important that we carry on what we do here today as volunteers to the next generation. So hopefully they remember all of us sitting up here and talking about what it's like to be a public servant, and our next generation will set us up and continue to take care of this community. So thank you for the privilege and the honor of being able to serve Simsbury.
Sean, this board is going to lose a huge asset.
She's sad you're leaving too.
Baby.
My sentiment exactly. It's a huge asset. The word that I think of in serving with you is partnership, because I remember in my first term, we among the things we did together, we tag teamed the Board of Finance budget presentation, and we were able to provide a unified bipartisan front to those spending asks. My next term, we had an unprecedented, I think it's fairly unprecedented partnership, accepting the offer to be deputy, which, I think it was a wildly popular decision amongst our residents from the feedback I received, and rather unpopular amongst some party insiders. But I think the partnership we had at the time, we didn't know that the COVID-19 pandemic was going to happen. And I'm really thankful that we had our town staff, and then your partnership as we were able to navigate those truly unprecedented times together. So I certainly count you as a friend, And I hope that we can continue to work together to benefit Simsbury moving forward, because I know that neither of us are going anywhere. Thank you.
Hey, Sean, this is I think I'm thinking back about your speech, and I don't think I really need to say much about you and thank you, other than to say, when you go home tonight when you have a chance, play back what you said and asked of the fellow citizenry to be involved. Because the reason why you're able to do that is because you have been involved in every one of those components of our government, whether it's as a resident, but also as committee member, as a board member, as a driver of various initiatives. It's absolutely incredible. You are the single largest loss this board will have with you leaving. I count you as my number one influence and educator as I've been on this board. And I've seen you move this board through delicate situations where others on this board would not have been able to navigate. Clearly myself, number one, it's one of those. I'm incredibly proud of what you've accomplished on this tenure of this board, but for this town. And the town doesn't know what's losing you. And I'm incredibly proud to have served with you, but also alongside you, and to call you a friend, sir. Appreciate that.
And Sean, I would say, I know you said it to me, but one of the most unexpected but welcome, aspects of my term was getting to work with you and developing the friendship that we had as we worked through things, even though we don't, like you said, always, approach things ideologically from the same way, but we're able to, I think, always put the town first and come to, a consensus and a solution that makes sense. I think that the institutional knowledge that you bring with your experience is just, it really, I know Eric and Chris have mentioned this, but it is going to be a big loss, because that is really meaningful information. And there has hardly been a single issue that has come up before this board that you have not had some insight from 2, 3, 4, 10 years ago that was relevant, that had to do with why things are the way they are. And that is gonna be hard to replace, very hard to replace. But I look forward to you, still being here in our community, as will the rest of us, and I'm sure we'll work together on many things for this town.
And I just like to say how much I enjoyed running with you. I've learned so much from you. Again, to repeat, but it's hard to learn less. But the institutional knowledge that you have will sorely be missed, and to serve 12 years on this board is a huge commitment, and to serve in this town. And I just appreciate all that you've done for the community. I appreciate getting to know you, and I especially love that I have gotten to get to know your girls.
They are pretty special. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. And next, we have Mr. Peterson. Move effective November 13th, 2023 to congratulate Selectman Chris Peterson on his tenure on the Board of Selectmen from 2017 to present. Further move to express the board's gratitude to Mr. Peterson for his service to his community. Neighbor?
Aye.
Overly efficient. Okay. Whereas Chris Peterson is being recognized today for his time on the Board of Selectmen from December 2017 through December 2023. And whereas Chris was a longstanding member of the Public Safety Subcommittee, and whereas Chris served as liaison to the Culture, Parks, and Recreation Commission, and whereas Chris served on the Short-Term Rental Ordinance Work Group and is chair of the One Old Bridge Road Naming Rights Committee. And now therefore, Wendy McStutis, first selectman of the town of Simsbury, and Lee Erdman, interim town manager, thank Chris Peterson for his service to the town of Simsbury and wish him well in his next venture.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm an individual who speaks for a living, and generally speak for a living, and I don't have, I guess one of the things that's I've been faulted with is I don't usually use prepared remarks, but if you'll indulge me tonight, I'm going to read from a bit of a script, because tonight's important to me. Also, my sister is here. I didn't know that, and she's probably gonna fact check what I was about to say. So, so I really didn't know you were showing up. So, our 89-year-old mother is not in town this week, but otherwise she's be here. As this is my last meeting, I wanted to put a historical slant on my usual sermon. Sean.
It's like 7 pages.
I know, it really is. I wanted to use Joseph, this thank you really isn't about me. My children are now the 3rd generation residents of the town of Simsbury, and I have no doubt that one of them will stay in Simsbury and maybe even live at 20 Longview Drive. So our history is long and important, and it starts a bit. Please indulge me. My father was born in New Haven, but moved to Hartford during the Depression after his father, my grandfather, lost the family business. It's quite impactful and it sort of defined a lot about how I grew up and was defined by my dad and his work ethic, which was unbelievable. An individual who worked 6.5 days a week, 3 jobs, ended up his career and working in the prison system. But really someone I admired and drove my sense of purpose that I only have now started to really realize and understand his dedication. Incidentally, my dad was at the circus the day of the Great Fire in Hartford as well, and there's a plaque with his name on it in Hartford, interesting enough. He met my mother at a wedding in North Carolina, and after the 3rd time of him asking her to marry him, she finally said yes and moved my mom to Hartford. My mom wasn't big on the city, so after my sister was born, and I didn't know you were gonna be here tonight. After my sister was born, they wanted a town with good schools. Isn't that a common theme? My dad, when he was growing up, occasionally would take field trips out to Avon, and there was a store there called Al's Ice Cream Shop, if anybody knows Al's on Route 44. And my father thought it was very bucolic, and my mother might like the town of Avon. So they looked there first, but they were discouraged by the realtor who felt being Jewish, they would be better off in Simsbury. So in April of 1963, they moved to Simsbury. In reality, by joining the Antonio family and moving to town, we immediately doubled the Greek population of the town of Simsbury. So hats off, Stephen, congratulations as well. My mom was looking for work as a teacher, and she applied to the town for a teaching job. And at the time, the old South School, I don't know if anybody who knows what the South School is, but it's the brick building across from the Pride gas station on the south end of town, was replaced by Latimer Lane. And my mom got a job teaching 1st grade that September in the inaugural class in 1963, and so began my family's involvement in the town of Simsbury. Fast forward, my mom joins the planning commission when I was in high school. She was then elected to the Board of Selectmen in 1990 and served for 6 years. She has been active on various boards and committees since and at 89 today is still rattling her saber on the Open Space Committee. My own involvement in town began in the 90s when I joined the fire department for a few years. I moved out of town for about 10 years, but came back in 2006 and soon after joined a committee, then was voted onto the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then 6 years serving here on the Board of Selectmen. I bring this all back. I think that what my mom instilled me, and my dad, who served in the Army and has a brick on the memorial over in front of the library. And Sean, thank you for the words you said on Saturday's Veterans Day ceremony. That was fantastic. So I think what my mom instilled in me two basic thoughts. One, to be of service, and that much of what makes Simsbury is the level of commitment from its volunteers. So be of service, and much of what we value in the town of Simsbury comes from volunteers, and it's simply amazing. To those points, the areas that I will miss the most are the three that I was most engaged: public safety, culture, parks and rec, and the juvenile review board. I was often the least qualified person in those rooms, but always left in awe of the level of commitment and knowledge from the staff and all those volunteers whose focus is our collective safety and governance and growth. Like an award speech, there are too many people to thank, but I'd like to acknowledge the teams of Tom in Orlando, Tom Roy's team, and Kristen's team as well. They are truly stars in this town. But the thanks go far beyond to all corners of town staff. It's remarkable what gets done with a team as lean as we have here, but that's the mark of true top-level professionals. Starting with Chief Balter, Chief Davis, in the team in public safety, out to Matt Curtis and the folks in our stewards of our educational experience, the folks in engineering, folks at the library, everywhere. It is truly phenomenal, the level of professionalism and talent that this town has. One of my kids asked me the other day why I was leaving the Board of Selectmen, and while there are a few reasons, I found I need a break. Our town must be fed by continued energy, and no elected position should be limitless or underserved. I am proud of raising and driving the additional social worker asset for Kristen in my first term. I'm proud of advocating for Tom and his department in Public Works. And I'm also proud that I drove the topic of cannabis into the public discussion and it ultimately was brought in front of the townspeople to make their decision. Also, I'd also like to thank the many people who texted me on election day asking where my name was. Finishing up, people often say they hope they are leaving something better than they found it. I prefer to say I hope I contributed in positive ways like the many board members before me. To that end, I'd like to thank Chris Kelly, Mike Payne, Cheryl Cook, Sean, Eric, Amber, and to that list, I'll add Maria, our first town manager. This town is better off because of all of your services. Lastly, I also hope that for Heather and for the incoming members of the Board of Selectmen, that they learned a bit from me, which is that if at all possible, leave the ballot letter next to your name at the door. Ask vulnerable questions and change your mind. Thank you all.
I guess I started everybody. Really well said, Chris. As I was going to mention the social worker, if you hadn't brought it up, one of the things I think that you do particularly effectively is ask questions, and that the social worker came out of a question Chris asked, which was Kristen Formanek was standing up there during our budget presentation, and Chris said something like, "What would you do if you had any more resources?" And you didn't think for more than 2 seconds on that question, and we have our town's first full-time social worker, and we really learned through that we were an outlier in not having that really important resource, and that's because of that question that Chris asked. I found that you provide a lot of value to me in helping me frame how to think about an issue, because one of the things you realize is none of us are experts in most of the things that we're asked to vote on, so I'm always looking for some kind of a framework to how do I think about it. And Chris, you so often have that framework that resonates with me, and I really appreciate you helping me and the rest of the board. think about how to approach these issues so that we can make the best possible decision. I'm gonna really miss her.
Yeah, Chris, I have also enjoyed working with you over these past couple of years. I think that your perspective is slightly different and it is a very needed one because you look at things very strategically. And I think those kinds of questions about, you know, if we do this, does it make your job easier when you're asking the police or teachers or the social workers? Does this make our town better? It kind of pulls you out of, sometimes you can get so mired in the details that you do find yourself kind of, you know, stopping and thinking about whether strategically this is something that we should be doing. And I think that is a valuable perspective to bring. So I'll miss working with you on this board. Again, I'm sure we're gonna see each other around.
I would just like to say, you know, when I first joined this board and everything being very new to me, it was nice to have you as a familiar face and friend, and I look forward to our continued friendship. I've really enjoyed on the board. You're just very steady and pragmatic, and I love that you have some great singer jokes, and if it's missed by others, that's their problem. So definitely miss the humor and miss your steadiness and just miss you in general on this board.
Chris, you're the most unique individual I have served with in my career. And I mean that with love and respect, in all sincerity. You have changed my mind more than any person I've served with. There is always a lesson in your sermons, and I know you and I banter back and forth about your lack of brevity. And that's okay, but anybody that wants to learn about what impacts this community and what matters needs to listen to the words that come out of your mouth. You have an innate ability to explain what the impact of what we do up here means to folks that are in the audience and out in the community, and I think that is such a widely valuable perspective that is often lost in government. Somebody being able to translate what the words mean to people that are gonna be impacted by it, and I for one have made better decisions because of you. So you have truly left an impact on this board and this community, and I really do thank you for that, Chris.
Thank you, Sean. Oh, thank you to my wife and my family.
Good job. She unlocked the door now.
Good one. One for the saves.
Last but not least, Mr. Wellman, move effective November 13th, 2023 to congratulate Selectman Eric Wellman on his tenure of the Board of Selectmen from 2027 to present. Further move to express the board's gratitude to Mr. Wellman for his service to this community.
I'll move that.
I'll second. And I'll begin with your proclamation. Whereas Eric Wellman is being recognized today for his service on the Board of Selectmen from December 2017 through December 2023, and whereas Eric Wellman served as first selectman from December 2017 until December 2021, and was the town's first selectman after the charter change to the town manager form of government. And whereas Eric Wellman served in his time on the board as a member of the Personnel Subcommittee, Hometown Heroes Selection Committee, as liaison to Board of Education, DEI Council, and Clean Energy Task Force. And whereas Eric Wellman passionately supported the Pollinator Pathway initiatives, and now therefore Wendy Maxdudas, first selectman of the town of Simsbury, and Lee Erdman, interim town manager, thank Eric Wellman for his service to the town of Simsbury and wish him well in his next venture.
Thank you. I prepared remarks, but unlike Chris, I'm gonna just go off script right now. I don't know if I've ever admitted this publicly, but when I was first elected, I didn't eat much or sleep much for about 3 days. I can't tell you what it means for a community to say that they have faith in you, that not only you put your name on the ballot, but they say that they want you to lead. And I think it was that responsibility that made me ask, am I really up for this? And I'll tell you, the most important decision I feel like I made was actually before I was even sworn in, which was choosing our very first town manager, Maria. And I find that if you really wanna get to know a community, there is no better way than to put your name on the ballot. The people that I've gotten to know, whether it's the Flower Bridge committee, the people who organize various events at the Performing Arts Center and our various cultural institutions, I can't tell you how active our community is compared to many other places that you might visit. But one of the things that worries me the most is how you see that civic engagement fraying across the country. And you also see evidence of that here too. I think about the volunteerism that Simsbury ambulance struggles with, and I'm sure the fire department and houses of worship see declining attendance. And I think that's, for me, I feel like that's one of the pressing issues of our time, and it's emblematic of so many other things. And if I could encourage the next board to do anything, it would be the small dollars that we actually get to influence that aren't already committed, investing in things, whether it's people or infrastructure or programs that bring us together as a community. I don't think that that's an investment that you're ever going to regret. I know everybody's said thank you to town staff, but just to give a perspective, when I was first elected, I took a tour of the Parks Department and Public Works and the police station and the library and in every department. And you get such an appreciation for the level of service in which that our community receives, and I wish that everybody could see this. Because no one likes to pay taxes, but everyone likes the things that taxes pay for. And it just made me so proud to be a taxpayer in Simsbury, because I know the level of service that we receive as a community and the ingenuity and the passion that our, from our department heads down to their teams have and the level that they serve us. I wanna thank Lee for stepping in as interim. I wanna thank Maria Capriola, who I don't think we got to do a public send-off, but I've never worked with anyone who has this combination of being so hardworking, so ethical and so kind all at the same time. And I've learned so much from her and terribly miss her. And thank the residents of Simsbury for giving me this really unique opportunity and this unique seat to get to know a community. So thank you all.
I have a kind of a I wanna kick it off. So I wanna go way back to when I first heard your name. And when I first heard Eric's name, I said, who? And again, my mom said to me, she's like, I like to talk, she's like, talk to Eric Wilman, he's thinking about running for the board. And I said, oh, board, and then she said, for Selectman. I said, who? Right? And so Eric and I got on the phone and we were talking, and he was clearly, and I was giving the whole hometown speech and all that, and he was like, he's like, Chris, what am I gonna do? You're gonna win. It's not gonna be an issue. You've got recognition, you have name brand, your family, your involvement, that's gonna go, but what do I do? And I said, and I was trying to think of something that was genuine and honest and helpful. And I was like, this guy has no chance. So I said, you just gotta hustle, you know, and I'm thinking, just gotta ask him on, snapping at his heels on one side and me and then other, they've got, a well-oiled machine on the board, and I said, oh my God, this guy, poor guy. I said, just hustle, and damn it, sure, that's what you didn't do. You hustled like no one else did. And you knocked on more doors collectively than I think any of the previous first selectmen people did ever. And you created not only that recognition, but I think you created a connection and dialogue, sincerity and authenticity of someone who had nothing pre-set in and with an answer, but one who just truly wanted to hear. And we were in an interesting time, and then fast forward, what do? You go and clean up and you win. And this town is so much better off because you raised your hand, you stepped up, and you did exactly what you said, which was you did something incredibly hard. You said, I'm gonna knock on as many doors as I possibly can. I'm gonna meet people I'm gonna talk to, and you listen. And we were in a unique situation. We're still in a unique situation. We're still transitioning. We still have resistance amongst certain individuals in this town to the new form of government. And you weathered a storm along with our first town manager and continued to try to keep a steady hand in the tiller and the ship and move us forward in a calm, collective way. And I applaud you for that. It wasn't easy. And I saw some things that weren't kind that happened to you, but at every step of the way, like many of these other members of this board, we serve with dignity, we serve with purpose and intent, and you never lost that. I really, truly respect that. I'm gonna miss this town is gonna sorely miss not having you involved for the time being. I have no doubt that you'll come back. And I was there at that meeting when Eric made the decision to ask Sean to serve with him. And I thought it was fantastic. I thought that's revolutionary for someone to think that way, and especially in this time and age. And you would have thought that it was the first time the people in that room, you would have thought it was the first time someone heard the world wasn't flat. I mean, they couldn't believe it. And it was impossible, and the world was ruined from that point forward potentially. And what happened? Nothing negative happened, only positive things happened from it. And I will say, wrap up, that throughout your tenure and throughout each time you put your hand on the wheel, only positive good things happen. I applaud you and I thank you for helping me through my experience and the town through this experience.
Eric, I would echo that. I mean, one thing as we've gotten to know each other better and work with each other on this board is that I really do think you lead with like empathy and kindness. And that is something that you just don't see in politics that much. To really put people first, to really think about people as complete human beings and not just political gamesmanship is a gift. And it is something that I think you brought to your term as first selectman. And as a selectman, I'm sure you'll continue to bring it to however you continue to serve Simsbury. But I think that, we'll be just that much less a little better off for I certainly hope that there will continue to be some people that also think that way, because that is something that is lacking in our political discourse right now and in some of the decision making that is being made, that these are, the staff that work here are individuals with feelings and sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that, and it's easy to think about scoring points instead of treating people with kindness and with some empathy. And after everything we've been through with the pandemic and all of the significant changes that have gone on in our form of government and in our leadership here at Town Hall, keeping people first and leading with some kindness and empathy will go a long way.
So Eric, you know how much I've enjoyed getting to know you these past 2 years. And you've had so much experience and advice, and I've definitely valued all of it. And on a personal level, I've really enjoyed to have someone on the board to talk a lot of tennis with.
She just likes the fact that she cleaned my clock at time we play.
I wasn't going to tell anyone that.
I'm surprised by that.
We'll rematch, you're having a bad day. But I've so enjoyed working with you and I wish you well with everything that you have to in your future.
Thank you.
So, buddy, you've been my partner since the day you showed up, and I didn't even realize it that day, and I'm very thankful for that. You did exactly what Chris just said. You made an unprecedented decision that you got crucified for. You've been treated awfully for to this day, and I'm saying that publicly for a very specific reason. You're one of the most courageous people I've ever served with because you did what was right for the community. Not because you picked me, because you did what you thought was in the best interest of this town, despite what it was gonna cost you personally and politically, and I've always admired you for that. We partnered on and got more done, I think, in those 2 years than most boards get done in a much longer time. We did LGBTQ plus, right, walkway and crosswalk, we raised a flag together. We talked about bees and pollination, which is actually a bigger deal than most people realize, and he got a Republican that loves finance to sit down for 2 hours and talk about bees. That's a lot of influence there, folks. We got a budget done, we invested in this community, we invested in police officers together. Because of your partnership, Eric, because of your courageousness, because of your willing to care about people in a way that not many would stand up and do. Our finance director, Amy Merriweather, is sitting here because of you, because we hired Maria together. Chief Bolter is the chief because of you. Tom Tyberski is running Rex because of you. We have a diversity and inclusion group with Sherry and Nicole that I think most communities should be damn well proud of. Kristen Formanek, part of that group, coming in with Maria. This community is better because of your leadership in a time where we didn't know what we were gonna do, we didn't know how to do it. And this community forever owes you a debt of gratitude. And the one thing I'm gonna demand of you is your picture belongs up on that wall. And
I think there's a plan to make that.
it needs to be there because this community needs to remember your contribution.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you.
All right, back to business.
Back to business.
Thanks for indulging us, guys.
Best of luck to all of you.
Best of luck to you, we're out of here.
So, now we will move on. We have a presentation from the Simsbury Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Housing Subcommittee. So we're ready for your presentation. Great.
You keep it to like 3 minutes, we've been going a little long tonight.
Yeah.
Just kidding, just kidding.
You guys made us, now you're gonna have to listen to it.
I know.
You might just have, it's the
Up and down.
but you might just point that to people. If you point off in the line, there you go.
Rick, why don't you? Yeah. Rick, you're gonna go next, so why don't you already go up there, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everyone. I really enjoyed hearing all the stories. I did. Brought back some memories. But you all deserve all of the accolades you've gotten, and we're all very proud to have you as our leaders. Anyway, tonight we have the report on inclusive housing in Simsbury. We are members of the Simsbury DEI Council, more specifically the Housing Subcommittee. Thank you for having us. This is the report on the 18-month project on public engagement and education on affordable and inclusive housing in Simsbury. With me tonight are members of the DEI Housing Subcommittee, Nicole Kodak, Rick Brush, Mario Ciupetti is behind me somewhere, Ed LaMontagne, and Rachel Hayes. Sarah Batchelor was here before, but she just couldn't make it through the We wanted to present to this board because you charged us with this mission. And this is the first public report from the housing group, and we want to thank you for your leadership on this. And we felt very strongly that this is the board we wanted to report back to first. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rick Brush.
Thanks so much to the Board of Selectmen and to the town leaders and staff and to residents for listening. We feel like it's our job to come back and inform you with what we've heard from residents. I'm Rick Brush. I'm a 21-year resident. I've lived here for 21 years with my wife in the same home. We've raised our 2 kids here. They've gone through the schools. And we love this community, and as a volunteer, I'm really proud to serve on this Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council. So we had this really rare opportunity to get to hear from hundreds of Simsbury residents about a topic that really provokes a lot of passion and thoughtfulness and interest, and you heard some of that even tonight. And what we want to do is just encapsulate a little bit what we heard, but more importantly, to ask you to continue the process because residents very much want to be part of shaping the solution. So luckily, we heard from a pretty good diversity of opinions, perspectives, demographics, lived experiences, people who come at this from all different places. And we heard about 3 things. We heard first, what do people love about this community? You know, what brought them here? Why do they live in Simsbury? What matters most to them about it today and into the future? And of course, we heard about the schools. We heard about the library. We heard about the people in the community, the trails, the open space. So this whole array of assets that we have as a community. Second, we heard about why, if things are so wonderful in Simsbury, do we need to do something right now? Why do we need to respond? What's calling us to respond? And really there are 3 things that we heard about. One is that the demographics are changing. Our community is changing. The nation, if you look at the demographics, it's changing. It's going to continue to change over the next few decades. Second, the needs are changing. Affordability of all things is more and more challenging, and especially housing. And we also need a different diversity or we need to keep expanding housing to meet this variety of needs beyond affordability. And then the third thing that we heard is, so what should we do now in this moment? And I think, Eric, you said, what question are we trying to answer? And we hope to, at least come to some initial crafting of what that question is by the end of tonight. But really what people said is, and they had lots of different ideas about what we should do, is that we need to do 2 things. We need to be proactive because there are developers who are making decisions about what to do in our town. So we need to be proactive in attracting the kind of development that we want. We need to be inclusive. We need to make sure that people have a voice in shaping that. And we need to do it with a sense of urgency because as you're hearing, the context is changing. There are pressures at state level and we're going to continue to feel that as a community. So, Nicole.
They're gonna fight over the clicker all night.
Oh, I'm deferring. Thank you. You know what?
Thanks.
I wanna just do it.
Sure.
Thank you. So I'm Nicole Kodak, one of the chairs of the DEI Council. We've been able to present to you before, so thank you for letting us speak tonight on this effort because it's exciting and we've learned a lot talking to a lot of people. One of the things we wanted to share is that we talked about with all the residents and our stakeholders, basically the idea of 2 tomorrows that was crystallized by our forum facilitator, Dr. T, who put it in those words, but it really helps us frame if we don't do anything to change and if we do something a little bit differently. If we don't have a plan that's proactive on affordable or inclusive housing, 2 different things, we'll have, we could see a more development of market rate housing, including rentals, which don't solve the problem of affordability. And we could have insufficient housing stock to serve seniors, people with disabilities, young people with families, or just young professionals that are single. And we could have more 830G housing that we don't support, that would likely erode our sense of place here in town. We saw that with Vessel, and we saw it as a really strong call to action for the community to come together and share that we don't want to have things like this happen to us. We want to be included and have things that enhance our sense of space. So with an affordable action and included affordable and inclusive housing plan, we would mitigate all this and be able to steer more proactively our sense of place. The other thing I do wanna say on that slide too is the opinions of people that we interacted with were not one-sided. They were very diverse, and people do feel very strongly about this. But most residents, despite how they approach this issue, agree on two things. We do wanna control our own destiny and have a little bit, have leadership really prioritize proactive planning that meets our needs as a town. And a lot of residents wanna be involved and do the work in the process too. Which is great, cause we don't always find that.
That's true.
So what we did, this is the work that we've provided over the past 18 months, funded by the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving Grant. And we're gonna share with you more details, but basically we started by holding stakeholder meetings, resident voices of lived experience. We have some recordings we're gonna share with you, just the highlights of people currently living in town in low-income housing. We did a survey on housing perspectives and inclusivity of Simsbury. We held some educational events and filmed some for SCTV. Some of us are better on screen than others. And then we held a community forum to start work on a shared vision for affordable housing. So now we're gonna tell you a little bit more about the highlights of each of this.
Good evening. My name is Mario Chiapatti. I've been a resident of Simsbury for 23 years. I live in Weetag. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about our stakeholder outreach. Now, one of the objectives we had when we started this process was to reach as many people in town from different backgrounds and perspectives as possible so that we would have a really comprehensive report for you all. And with that in mind, we identified several different types of stakeholders we wanted to meet with: businesses, residents, different town commissions, and we ended up having 12 different stakeholder meetings. We met with town clergy, we met with realtors from inside of Simsbury and outside of Simsbury. We met with businesses such as the Big Y. We met with the Housing Authority, the Rotary Club, some members of the Democratic Town Committee, the Republican Town Committee, Simsbury Public Library, which was really helpful for us since it really is the center of the town for us, and it just captures so many different voices at a given point in time. Parks and Recs we met with the Aging and Disability and Sustainability Committee. So we really met with a lot of different people, part of those commissions. And from there, we obtained very helpful insights into how our town is viewed from all these different stakeholders, especially from stakeholders outside of Simsbury. Because it's very nice to talk to people inside, but how are we viewed from people trying to come into Simsbury? We learned that affordable housing is important to many of our businesses. You know, they want to be able to attract employees and have them live in the town where they work. We learned that many stakeholders realize there's a need for affordable housing for our young people, our older residents, and for people of lower incomes who have very few options in town. And finally, we also learned that Simsbury is not as welcoming to visitors or to residents of color or of lower income as we thought, and that we need to do more if we wish to be. We're just gonna show you some different excerpts from some of the stakeholder meetings, and then we'll follow up with the voices.
We have this, so you have the package, and we're going to be able to make this available publicly as well. So people can read all of this in more detail. And on the next slide, there's a few slides that have audio and visual that we've condensed. And then there's links within it to a full range of everything that we've heard. Like, we're holding nothing back. Like, if you want to hear what we're gonna hear a highlight of right now, we held last October listening sessions with 10 residents who are at qualifying for food pantry distribution every month. And we just asked them a few simple questions. And so this is just a 2-minute and 56-second listen to some of what they had to say.
I loaded it. It's
He's
not
got- he's
letting
got-
us access it. No. I can't download it. The computer firewall won't let it.
What about over there?
No, it's a town.
That's what we bought last meeting, was the endpoint.
Do you,
protection.
I have mine. I want me to try to pull it up and play it.
Somebody text Bizzano.
It's already on.
Sure.
Do you have it on your,
Do you hand me the bag real quick?
do you have a draft on your phone?
Yeah, that's what she's gonna. Thank you.
It worked in rehearsal.
It
did.
We rehearsed the whole thing.
You need an HDMI port.
To play.
Yeah. You need an HDMI.
Oh.
We'll put it up on the packet website so that you can click into it.
Hold on. What about if I do it on my phone, same thing?
Like I won't be able to like project it.
Yeah, but they could hear
Just play
it.
it into the microphone.
Yeah, yeah.
What happens if you put that in slideshow and just click from there?
Let's just play it, Nicole. Yeah.
Let that build for a sec.
It's just not there. It's the computer just won't let it download.
Let's see if I can get some voices going here. Let's see.
Good firewall.
Listen.
You watched the tape of our last meeting, how much we paid for that firewall.
We rehearsed this like 5 times.
Yeah. It's cause it can't scan the file. Yeah, it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. We've talked about, these are, and again, these are really important, and we talked about these about a year ago, right? And I think I mentioned to this board how
Yeah.
impactful they were when I heard them. They're
They were
really,
sent to us.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, I think we got
it's
these,
not
Nicole, is,
Yeah. All right.
we
The
got
board
these as board
is
members
listening to
before,
them.
so,
Okay.
not to minimize, it's,
And they're incredibly moving.
they really
They
are.
are, they are.
I know, I can see why you're trying so hard to have them
Well, and the
right
most
now.
important thing is, we want their voices to be what you hear, not us talking about their
Yeah.
voices.
Yes.
Because when you hear them express that, you know, they can't afford to go down to the meadows and they have several people have struggled with social interactions for their children who are found out to live in a poor area on the directories in schools, and so they can't have play dates. So one mom was saying she tells her daughter not to care, or a couple of people living up at in Terriffill somewhere are really struggling. They're paying more for electricity to heat the apartment than they are for rent, and it's not insulated. And this one mother has a special needs child, and she can't keep the child warm enough. And have squirrels coming in occasionally. Like, there's just like really heartbreaking stories of what's happening in our town that we don't usually see and hear. So
And some situations we don't think about, like Spooktacular. It seems like a fun event for every kid, and this one mom talks about if you can't afford the costume, you know, you feel self-conscious going around, and so they don't go. So even though they would like to go, and it's hard to hear.
it is.
Okay.
Bummer about that. So but we have the residents' little clip, and then we've got also the link right there to the 19.5-minute a little bit longer. And then if you wanna hear the raw recordings, there's your link. So it's all out there. So let's go to the next one. Oh, is it gonna come now?
No, it was, no.
Oh,
Sorry.
excited.
That's what I clicked to get it last time.
So definitely encourage you to listen. It's 2.5 minutes, 3
Yeah.
minutes? Yeah. Now this, on the other hand, is a lot of words about a lot of data. And so in addition to the voices, which I think are really the most important part, is listening to those personal stories of experiences of living in Simsbury. We do have a pretty long document as well that's linked here, 2 documents actually, which is the quantitative survey that we did. So we actually got 300 Simsbury residents to complete a survey at the beginning of our 18-month process to really get a gauge on perspectives before we started the education and engagement process. And then we did a survey after our community forum. In addition to the quantitative data, there are actually extensive verbatim comments that you can read. It's 48 pages long. There are hundreds of comments. These as well are anecdotes and stories and personal experiences and hopes and dreams and fears about living in Simsbury. So I think for both town staff as well as Board of Selectmen, including the incoming Board of Selectmen, really important to, I think, get a sense of what's on people's minds. So I will just highlight a couple of things. We asked people to say, what is it like living in Simsbury? What's your experience living in Simsbury in terms of, do you feel included? Do you belong? Do you feel like it's a welcoming place? We also asked them to think about how others might perceive, living in Simsbury, to think about whether Simsbury is inclusive for everyone. And then we asked them to think about housing specifically as part of that equation and how it fits together. Just gonna highlight 3 findings. One, when we ask people about whether more housing options or choices, just regardless of specifics, more housing options or choices would make Simsbury a better place to live. More people agreed versus disagreed with that. So there's receptivity. We think there's some openness to talking about this expansion. This is, again, before the education process. More specifically, when we asked about expanding affordable options, I know there are different definitions of affordability, but there's also, I think, some specific definitions that people learn through the education process. But around the general idea of expanding affordability, so specifically so that people of all income levels can live in Simsbury, we had a very, again, much stronger agreement with that than disagreement. So again, town is open to it. And then third, in terms of what town leaders should be prioritizing, we asked whether increasing diversity of residents through the use of housing and thinking about housing as a way to increase our diversity in Simsbury, if that was a good idea. And again, we got much stronger agreement than disagreement with that statement. So out of 300 people. We also dug down a little bit into the demographics. I know, Eric, you like digging through the data. We wanted to see if anything popped in terms of how different demographics would answer the questions. And what we really found was the biggest difference in how people answered depended upon income or other socioeconomic factors. Just as an example, when we asked those whose household income was less than $100,000 a year, about their own experience of living in Simsbury and whether they felt it is an inclusive place, only 25% of those household incomes earning less than $100,000 said that I experienced Simsbury as an inclusive place to live. That contrasts with the overall population, the 300, it was about half of people said that they felt included in Simsbury, so a pretty big difference. Last thing I want to talk about is just this second survey that we did. We had fewer responses because it was around the people who actually came to the community forum, which Rachel will talk about in a minute. But these are people who invested a significant amount of time. They invested a few hours with us one evening to really not only be educated about the words and the options and the topics of affordable housing, but to sit with their neighbors around small tables and have a conversation and really explore together what sort of the shared values are in the town and what our options might be to move forward. And when we asked people after that experience what they thought about it, they said overwhelmingly it really helped them think differently. So I think that's a message, again, about bringing people together in such a way that they can have dialogue, really opens our minds and potentially allows us to collaborate more effectively as residents. People really appreciated the opportunity to share their views. They weren't sure coming out of that 3 hours whether we had a clear path forward. Only about 58% said that they see a path forward. So I think that's really the opportunity in front of us, is to clarify that path forward. 3/4 of the people who answered said they definitely want to stay involved in that process. So they don't want something imposed on them from town leadership or elected officials. They really want to participate continually in shaping that process. So it was a great start, gave residents some hope. They're open to this conversation, and more importantly, rolling up their sleeves and being part of crafting a solution. I think, and the 48-page document is available.
That would be good, yeah. So we, during this process, we conducted 2 educational events. The first was called Housing Basics. It was on May 12th, 2022. We had 60 residents attend. It was held at the Simsbury Public Library. Panel consisted of George McGregor, Director of Simsbury Planning and Community Development, Rich Correa, Executive VP of RM Bradley Commercial Real Estate, and myself as the past Executive Director of the Simsbury Housing Authority, and I'm not ready to say retired yet. So at that time, Mr. McGregor discussed a process for working with developers who may be interested in building affordable housing in the town of Simsbury. Mr. Correa discussed the current housing stock in town that may be appropriate for affordable housing projects, as well as possible locations for affordable housing. I provided an overview of the definition of affordable housing and what the federal government defines as affordable. I also discussed the current properties we have in town that are considered for low-income individuals. The second event we had was Pathways to Affordable Housing. That was held on November 9th, 2022. We had 70 residents attend. Again, George McGregor moderated the event. Kylie Goslin was the executive director for Partnerships for Strong Communities. Matthew Straub, Senior Program Officer, Lending and Investments at Local Initiatives and Support Corporation, and Leanne Hanfield Curtin, Director of Development for Beacon Communities. Ms. Goslin discussed the definition of affordable housing, who needs it, and data from Simsbury and the state, as well as myths and realities regarding affordable housing. Matthew Straub outlined his organization's role in the funding process for affordable housing. He provided a detailed timeline of the process developers need to navigate before building affordable housing, and offered some suggestions as to how communities can be supportive of the process. Leanne presented the marketplace perspective of developing affordable housing, benefits to the local community of diverse housing options and varying price points, and misunderstandings around affordable housing, such as who lives there, transportation, and employment opportunities. The last educational event, if you will, that we did 7 episodes on SCM. We did an intro to DEI Council, about DEI and equity councils, housing basics, Connecticut housing issues, pathways to affordable housing in Simsbury. So now that at least 4 out of 5 of you have some extra time, I would encourage you to click on the link and you can see your TV, and I'm gonna make sure Heather does that as well. But it's, you're well done. Thank you. Rachel?
So in May of this year, we hosted a community forum on housing. And so the purpose of this forum was to bring people from all different perspectives and backgrounds in Simsbury to have a constructive conversation about the issues surrounding the development of affordable housing. It is typically a pretty hot button topic, especially recently. And so it was due to our grant from the Hartford Foundation that we're able to bring in Dr. Tiffany Manuel to facilitate a discussion. And the discussion was centered around 2 major questions. The first being what our current and future housing needs are in Simsbury, and what happens if we don't do anything, if we don't address these needs. And the second question was, what needs to be in the plan if we do wanna address these needs. And so at the end of the 3 hours, like you said, it was a long time commitment, but at the end, each group got up and collectively presented their opinions, their perspectives in front of the camera that I would love to show you, but unfortunately can't. But they are there for viewing, so.
We're gonna try.
I can attend.
We're gonna attempt.
Oh, I spoke too soon.
Oh.
Almost.
That was like so, I feel like I just cursed it.
Okay.
So Cheryl,
Oh.
now.
Okay, what we recommend. The first thing we recommend is that the Board of Selectmen endorse the expansion of affordable and inclusive housing consistent with the 2023 POCD update, including its updated action steps on page 98, if you're following along, and the 2021 Affordable Action Plan, page 12, and the recent draft of the proposal of Affordable Housing Strategies and Advisory Committee, which only exists in draft form now, but which Lee and his office have been working on, and it contains a lot of information. But it is definitely worth looking at to highlight those strategies that are doable. There's something that we can work with. The second thing is that we would like to thank Eric and Sean for being our liaisons and supporting us for the last 2 years. We have 3 subcommittees, a steering committee, and we are a lot to deal with. So Kristen tells us, she couldn't even wait for us. And we have very much appreciated the 2 of you and your leadership and your participation along the way. So because of that, we think we should have 2 more liaisons with the new board because we are a lot and we have a lot of meetings. We have the steering committee and 3 subcommittees that all do important work. So we would like to ask for that. And the third thing is in the goal setting that you do with the town manager and the department heads, we would like to at least try to develop a timeline for an affordable and inclusive housing plan, because we feel like even though we have hit the priority list in the last few years, it's lacking any sense of deadline or urgency. And I think putting a timeline to it sort of gets us all on the same page, and puts us, in a more public and transparent mode for reporting back to the public on how we're doing. And next, we have a list of things which I could read to you, but we feel like the town should proactively encourage affordable and inclusive housing development. And that includes zoning, tax abatements, infrastructure assistance, state and federal resources to support funding, learning from other towns around us, and that's very important. It sounds trivial, but it is not. We have learned through this 2-year process of grant funding that we would have benefited from talking to other towns who got the same grant as us. And what did you do? What worked? How do you get people to show up and participate in this? So we really mean that when we say that. Identify developers who are proven partners with towns who have successfully developed these projects in other towns around us, and enhance our sense of place. And as Nicole said earlier, not so we feel like we're getting, beat over the head with this, but that is something that the community has a vision for, that we can get behind. And in the process of doing that, update the public on a regular basis so that all those people, and we have a list of 100 people who want to be involved in this process, feel like they can participate and feel like they're being heard. Because when we did the forum, that's what we heard, was that people wanna have their say, they wanna talk to each other about this. And I think that's how we move forward. We also have some organizations who are already positioned to attract business and development to town, and I think we should take advantage of what we have to support economic development, because developing housing is economic development. And we learned that through our educational programs and our speakers, that how much economic activity comes from enhancing your housing stock to include everybody. And when we say that, we do mean everybody, you know, as we said before. Housing for people with disabilities, housing for people with intellectually disabled people, you know, with support, seniors, single people, young families. We don't have any low income housing now that serves young families. We only have one place where people with families can get a voucher for, so anyway, it's important. So we think the Economic Development Commission and Simsbury Main Street Partnership could be helpful in this process. They are in the business of attracting business to Simsbury, and we should tap into that. When we talked to Lee about this, he suggested updating the brochure, so to speak, to include some, reference to housing development. Because yes, we all love our local businesses, but we never really talk about housing as a local business, but it is. And as Lori said before, landlords are business people too, so they should be included in the conversation, and people coming to town should be included in that.
We just have two more things we recommend, we think it would make sense that, we heard that both at the POCD public hearing and our work through the past 18 months, that people would like more information and have it be a little bit easier to access. They find it a little cumbersome to figure out when are the meetings and what's gonna be talked about and how do I hear about it, and just, I don't know what the magic answer is, but I think people would like to hear more and be involved. And then the last thing is, many expert documents have already recommended the creation of a town affordable housing committee. The affordable housing plan, the POCD has, and comprised of different stakeholders with town staff, elected officials, developers possibly, not conflict of interest wise, interested private citizens. We would love to have a DI representative on the committee to make sure that this work continues, and we have built some momentum and public will around this. Well, we've harnessed it. I don't know that we built it, but we'll continue to be in touch with people. We've heard it.
We're trying.
And the reason this is important is because right now the authority spreads out, zoning, planning, and so to have everyone come together to form the plan is really the only way we're gonna be able to move forward.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So after hearing from so many residents, we are here really to ask for a partnership, again, with this current Board of Selectmen and the incoming Board of Selectmen, with staff, current staff and new staff that will be coming on board, to partner on a process that would meaningfully involve residents in really moving forward at this point with action. And our commitment back to you in doing that would be this little team will continue to build or harness this public will, this attention that we now have of residents. So use us in a way to continue to capture that. We do have this distribution list of people who are very interested in moving this conversation forward. I think it's, again, reflecting on what we learned, really important to engage residents in a way that goes beyond forums like this, where people can give their opinion and then walk away from the podium and sit down with each other in dialogue. Because as we heard, opinions change when we hear from residents and we share different perspectives, and it is possible to find common ground. So I think that kind of forum, engaging residents and sharing their feedback and really collaborating on a path forward. And then finally, our commitment back to supporting you all and holding each other accountable, not just to each other, but to the residents of Simsbury who are asking for this. So, Rachel.
So to summarize everything, the common thread through all of our work and many of the things that you'd all talked about and why you love to serve here is there's so many things that make Simsbury unique and just an incredible place to live. It's the reason why you come here to begin with, or you stay through generations, or like for me, I'm 25, I grew up in Simsbury, I left to go to school, I got my bachelor's and my master's and came back. And it's So it's those things that we wanna be able to protect and keep going through future generations. And so we have the opportunity right now to proactively shape expanding housing in a way that protects those things that we all love, regardless of who we are and what our backgrounds are.
And lastly, just that we worked with an awful lot of people that were amazing, and we wanna acknowledge the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. Simsbury Community Media has been vital for us, and the library. Simsbury Community and Social Services, public schools, for us to have our forum there and to work with Dr. Batchelor and the Equity Council. Hundreds of Simsbury residents and stakeholders who took time to interact and engage in this, and then finally you for appointing us and getting this whole thing started. So thank you, and I hope this is the beginning of some real significant, meaningful progress.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Do you have any questions for us, or?
So I have a question, Lee, but also please, you guys chime in. So we've got, to me, you've got a sort of you've got a convergence here of three documents or three work efforts. You've got POCD, right? You've got this team's work, and then you've got the advisory committee's work on affordable housing, right? So they're all sort of converging at similar times, I would say. And so we have, I think you mentioned Vessel, I think, Nicole, and that was a flashpoint for just for awareness, right? It created awareness because most of us, like me, sort of trip through life and until something like that happens, then it brings it front and center that something's happening or about to happen. And it's not as if we don't want. We have to have affordable housing. We have to have affordable housing, right? How we go about it is we're at that precipice right now. I think it's just give all these ideas are coming together. The vessel, yes, I am demonizing the vessel project. I'm sorry, because that's an opportunistic. There's no altruism at all. It's opportunism. Okay, so it's. I'm on my way out, so I can say what I want. But that opportunity wouldn't have come to us in the town in the shape and form and manner in which it is now. I mean, now it's a matter of legal issue. If we had a strong document in place prior to them identifying the town of Simsbury, right? If we had a strong document, whatever governing document that was the convergence of the POCD is your strongest document. POCD, your work, and then this work, they wouldn't have been able to fight as deep as they are, right? Because they would have thought differently potentially about this. So, sermon's over. So my question is, how far off, Lee, as a short timer as well, and your you guys have talked to the folks involved, the POCD, you talked with the committee out here. How far off do you think we are until we converge these three work efforts to actually put a plan in place that does put us on a path to fulfilling the mission that you all folks are impassioned about, but also protecting Simsbury from that type of event, which a whole other cohort of voices are also concerned with as well. So how far off do we think we are?
I would guess if everybody works hard at it, an implementable plan is probably doable within, I'd say, 6 months. You know, if a housing committee is put together, and we have all of the materials that you talked about as background, and staff assistance and further input from the community, I think the Affordable Housing Committee can identify the main strategies for the town to use going forward within a 6-month period, and then set about trying to implement those strategies. There's a lot of strategies out there, a lot of things the town could do. So I think the focus should be on what are the strategies that make the most sense for Simsbury. Focus on those first, see if they can be implemented. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not the state of Connecticut brings a further hammer down on the cities and towns in terms of converting the 10% goal. I mean, there's a certain amount of hammer there already with 830G. But there could be more of a hammer in turning that 10% goal into a mandate for all the cities and towns, and that probably won't be dealt with by the state legislature until the 25 session. So we probably have a good year to be ready for that, but I think we can move more quickly than that if we want to, in terms of identifying the core strategies we think make sense, and then the steps, implementation steps to move those strategies forward.
Just to add my 2 cents, so 830G is the bane of Connecticut's existence. It's a law that's been on the books that has not worked. One party's been in charge for my entire life, except for 2 years. And that party continues to swirl on this issue and not get serious about it. Lee is correct, it's an election year next year, so the legislature won't touch this. So we have until 25 because the folks at the state have absolutely no courage to actually do what's right for Connecticut on both sides of the aisle, by the way. So at the end of the day, the only thing that talks to developers is money. So this is an illustrative plan, as is the POCD, but neither have teeth. At this point, it will take too long to change the zoning regs. So what I would suggest is we have to come up with a tax abatement strategy that will incentivize development that somehow makes 830G affordable for developers and for communities, and fixes the percentage problem, because the woman that spoke at public audience is exactly right. 830G housing will continue to be bastardized and never change the percentage. The housing stock will increase, which is good, but the percentage will never be achieved. And if this community is serious about a balance, then that's where we need to change the balance, right? And the only way to change the balance in the world of a free market capitalistic society is money. So there needs to be, the next charge is how do we structure it? And we've done a lot of, Sherry and I and others have done tax abatement plans through different subcommittees over the years. There's a way to do this.
That's why I put it in.
What's that?
That's why I put it in there.
Right, and I suggest we prioritize that along with Chris's coming together of the 3 plans, because without the money, the suggestion is all that is, right, is just a suggestion. And then the community can decide, right, in a budgetary manner, and we'll have to figure out, the future boards will have to figure out, you guys will have to figure out with the Board of Finance, how do you pay for that? Right, do you actually put it in the budget, do you set it aside, do you put a fund for it? You know, how do you deal with that to make it transparent, because that will solve the problem. And the survey tells us that there is interest in this community to solve the problem. So if that translates to a workable plan, that translates to abatements, that translates to a budget item, theoretically it will pass, right? So, and I think that's the path to solution, instead of waiting for the state to continue to do what they do.
That's
I'd actually, and I'd add, I had an idea I floated to Lee earlier. I think one of the, 830 is a disaster, right? I mean, you know, it's interesting that the town is facing 2 huge events that are both land oriented at the same time, 2 converging events. You've got a huge proposal of 500 plus units that is going to create such an enormous cost to this community that no one, you know, the cost of living in Simsbury will never go down. Sorry, folks. Moving forward, and then you have this issue of affordability, which is counter to that concept, right? And it's also actually adding potentially to the problem. And but another thing we can do, I think, Shad, idea is that predatory developers, or even the state itself, which is trying to find. It's like a searchlight coming around and it's looking to land on something that's indefensible. You wanna get that searchlight off you, right? And one of the ways that you get the searchlight off is you start taking action and doing things and saying, no, look, we are doing. No one is ever going to agree. Is it 2, 10, 11, 12, 5? You know, the number's always going to move, right? Because it's interpretive. It'll never be perfect. But our weakness is we're not being proactive was your term, and we're not taking action. If once we start taking action, then the spotlight will stop and move on to someone else who isn't taking action, and they can start preying on that community, if you will, okay? Whether it's the legislature and trying to be altruistic and saying Tim Simsbury's terrible, whichever it is, or a business owner or a developer. But we really do need to start taking action, so we can say, yes, you're right, we're not there, but we are trying to be a better version of ourselves, and we are trying to move forward, we're trying to take corrective action. So one of the ideas, I think, is we have a housing authority, this is an idea, take it, run with it. We create a quasi organization that does development. You can get into the development business as a town. Communities have done it across the country. They can do it. It's not so the idea would be not for profit. You take some seed money, right? You take some seed money and you buy a piece of property. Where do you buy the piece of property? Or potentially you use open space. My God, my mom's gonna fall off the chair right now. But there is land in places that may not be the best decision, but it helps you make a better decision versus something that's coming that you have no control of. So this town's New England were founded upon manufacturing. They're founded upon centers of town of churches, post offices, power, and transportation, right? So rivers, so someplace along our central corridor, which is a beautiful central corridor, you find some affordable property. I take the Ensign Bickford homes, okay, what are they called? The Ensign Bickford homes. The town of Simsbury with some seed money, there's federal money to do it, you've got, and all your buzzwords in this are, you've got housing trust fund, investment fund, CTHFA, adaptive reuse, town land, workforce housing overlay, proactive, right? You got all these organizations. You buy a home. You renovate that home. You use a trusted developer with guidance from a committee of volunteers who ensure the quality of work is high quality, that it's meeting the expectations that we would want. Potentially you partner with the high school and you do trade education with somebody who's a teacher over there. You get those kids involved, you get committee, we know there's plenty of people who would be on that committee to help guide that development of that piece of property. You buy the piece of property, you renovate it, and then you sell it, right? And you sell it into a pool which is considered, meets the definition of workforce, of affordable housing, right? And potentially any proceeds go to buying the next piece of property, okay? And then that piece of property is then developed by the town, and so on and so on and so on, until at least the fund is no longer, there's no longer money being invested into it by the town, or you do continue to invest in it to continue to perpetuate that engine of buying housing that's in our transportation corridor, our workforce housing corridor, on our bike path, which we're near businesses, near work, near the bus routes, all these kinds of other things. We define what it looks like, we define where it is, we invest in our community, and we say potentially to those outside organizations, look, we are taking action. We do have a housing authority that's trying to solve the problem. In addition to the ideas of that Sean brings up, sure, to encourage responsible developers to come into town to take a look at an opportunity to put something that fits in with the harmony of the POCD in a place where we want it and the people of the town of Simsbury can be. But I think that's the kind of thinking you have to get behind.
One of our stakeholders actually suggested sort of a rehab plan for those, the NOAAs, the pre-existing affordable housing that our speaker was talking about earlier, because they do exist. But you do need an overall structure like that to essentially run it. Because we do have those homes here in town that may not be, right now suitable for seniors or, for supported housing or whatever it is, but they can be rehabilitated at a relatively low cost. And then,
we take the initiative. We have so many realtors who are involved.
So I would suggest that you do go through the stakeholder, and if you listen to like the red carpet clips from the forum, all those tables got up with their table sheets and talked about what their ideas were, and they're terrific. So I would say listen to your residents on those tapes, because they're telling you what you can do.
I think, when we look at this, at the end of the day, the real way to move forward is to form a committee that is, right now, you're working so hard and doing so much to research the housing space, and we have a planning commission, and I think we need all these different groups to come together, and businesses and stakeholders, and we need to look at what we want this picture to really look like. We see right here, Chris has an idea. That's just coming out of this discussion right here. When we look at other towns, I don't think there are any towns in the state of Connecticut outside of the cities that actually are meeting the 830G requirements. So it is a difficult, tall task to meet, but what are some of the other towns trying to do to get there? But I think we have to look at our development as a whole, because as to Chris's point, we have a potential new over 500 so it just moves us further away from the needle every time we build.
Like I
Our
said,
percentage
we
gets
heard from our
smaller.
business owners too. We heard from the Riverview and Fitzgerald and Ensign Bickford and all Big Y who want to hire people who can live in town, who can be part of our ongoing economy of this town. But it's very difficult.
As one of the people who asked you to take on this project, I wanna thank you all. It's what you see up here, it's literally the tip of the iceberg in terms of the work that was done.
Well done.
And I think what you've done, first, you've educated, I can speak for myself, you've educated me, and I'd like to tell you in a few ways, but you've educated this board, but also you put a package together that you can give to the next board to quickly get up to speed on this issue, as I hope that they put a task force together quickly. I would encourage you to really limit the scope or narrow the scope or be as specific as you can in the scope of that task force so that it can come up with actual recommendations quickly. I think 6 months is right. It's hard to do almost anything in 6 months, but I think you've given us
18 months.
a tremendous head start.
Right.
Now, if I can, I just wanted to talk to the DEI Council about how you've helped me. Because I was saying earlier that when you're elected, you get a really unique lens into a community. I don't want to come out the wrong way, but you've shown me that I'm a white guy. And what I mean by that is everyone walks through life with their lens and their perspective, and that perspective is how you present to the world. And through the Let's Talk series, through other panel discussions, you've brought voices that help me see, very viscerally what happens when someone pulls up to a handicap spot and can't get out of their car because someone parked over the white lines there. And we heard those stories from residents of our community, not in a theoretical way, but in a very real way. And I've talked to so many residents since then who said, why do we need this? Simsbury is a very friendly place. And I think that Simsbury is and can be, but it depends on who you are and how you walk through the world.
Like I said, that's why the voices are there.
And I've tried to I've tried to explain that to as many people as possible, because we only know the world through the lens in which we have. And you've helped me see other lenses that I wasn't privy to. And that's tremendous.
Well, you're welcome anytime.
As a member of the committee, I just want to acknowledge the work that Cheryl and Nicole did chairing our committee. They listened very carefully to what you asked us to do and kept us on the straight and narrow. They worked really hard, and they're tremendous leaders and a great resource for the community. So I just want to put that on record.
We agree with your treasure.
Thanks, Mario.
I mean, I would like to say that I really appreciate you doing such a good job of trying to put a face and a voice to the stories of people that are affected by this issue, because anyone that tried to follow this conversation for the last
15, 20 minutes, it can easily immediately start turning to, you know, a convoluted state statute and how to get around that and how to put a development deal together that has, you know, 10 people involved in multiple layers, and it quickly gets very esoteric and it's really hard to feel like to get your arms around that. But there is a very human part to this and also just a very real part of people are having a hard time, you know, moving to our community at all because there is no housing inventory at almost any price point. That's why we have these market rate apartments coming online. There's a huge demand for them. I mean, I realize it causes problems with hitting that 10% mark on the affordable housing problem, but that speaks to a different housing problem that we have, that there's just nobody is selling a house, you know, and that's a whole nother conversation, that there's no inventory. But that affects people, you know, I mean, we're losing out on a lot when people can't move to your community and can't, you know, and businesses are not able to hire enough people to work at their businesses because people can't live here. So it really is an economic development issue. And I'm looking forward to see how this moves forward, because I think it's gonna be it's one of the most important conversations we have in our town that's gonna really affect what our town looks like for years and years to come.
You just keep listening. I mean, I tell people, like, at the forum, the table I was sitting at for a while, there was a young woman there who does live here in town, but she rents a condo. And all the people on the other side of the room were talking about all the wonderful things about Simsbury, and it's so great, and we love all this and love all that. And she looks at me and she goes, "What town do they live in?" And she's just, and I thought, you know, like Eric said, that's your lens, you know. Everything can be lovely, you know, for one person, and it's not for somebody else. So you just have to keep your eyes open and your ears open.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Well done. Thanks for being here and hanging with us tonight.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about the going over the 10-minute thing, but we knew we weren't gonna make it.
Thank
I wasn't even in the cards without the recordings.
Didn't follow that when you were up here, you're not gonna follow it there.
Oh, you're going back.
Oh, Joe.
Yes, I am.
Sherry's coming for you, watch out.
I know.
you. Okay, so moving on to our agenda.
I'm a very bad driver.
Bye-bye.
Thank you guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, hold on.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next up, we have our first selectmen's report. As we said earlier, Wendy unfortunately is sick today, so she will have that posted online for us tomorrow. So we will move on to our town manager's report.
Thank you very much. I do not have a report from the town manager, but I do have a number of reports from departments. First up is Culture, Parks and Recreation. A reminder that Simsbury Celebrates will be held on Saturday, November 25th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. along Hop Meadow Street between Drake Hill and Plank Hill Roads. The all ages event features a variety of fun and exciting indoor and outdoor entertainment, exhibitions and demonstrations. The Simsbury Volunteer Fire Company has once again organized an amazing holiday decorated fire truck parade to take place at 7:25 p.m. and the event concludes with a spectacular fireworks show at Simsbury Meadows at 8:15 p.m. The event is free to attend, however, there will be food available for purchase from on-site vendors. And to get more information, please check out simsburycelebrates.com. Secondly, from our Public Works Department, bagged leaves will be collected from November 27th through December 7th, 2023, weather permitting. Please place your bagged leaves curbside the night before or by 6 a.m. on the morning of your street's collection. No item should be placed in the street or in any way block a sidewalk, All leaves must be contained in biodegradable paper bags. Plastic bags will not be accepted. And under no circumstances should you blow or rake your leaves into the road. Residents can also bring bag leaves and grass clippings to the bulky waste facility during normal hours at no charge. Facility is open Wednesdays and Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And the town's leaf collection page has been updated to help you determine when the collection will occur in your neighborhood between the dates of November 27 and December 7. Finally, from the library, part-time adult services librarian Kristen K. Yatraroya, I probably butchered that, has been promoted to the position of full-time adult services librarian. Kay joined the library staff in the fall of 2021. She received a bachelor's degree in marketing from Southern New Hampshire University and her MLIS degree from the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, Scotland in 2020. We're very excited to have Kay join our full-time library staff. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And then we will move on to liaison reports. We'll start at the end. Chris, do you have anything?
Just to touch on, add to what Lee said, on the Simsbury celebrates, it's actually the 32nd year, if I didn't realize. But last year was their largest ever with 20,000 people plus. So clearly successful, but get there and get there early for your spots. Two things I just want to follow up on the board has been involved with. The first AED that was being put into town is being installed at the farms. Should be actually maybe being installed right now, as a matter of fact. That was, if you all recall, it was the first one was being donated to us by a resident, an individual who's on the Board of Culture, Parks and Rec. And I think that Tom's initiative and the future boards will see it, that there's look to continue on that through some funding mechanisms to continue to add AED. So that first one is actually purchased here, it's going up this month. And then the second thing up there, because we all were intimately involved with it, the playgrounds at the farms are almost done. So the kids' playground is done. And I believe that the larger playground, which is for 5 and up, not as old as, you can't go out, Eric. But that one is actually in process of being complete as well. So our first full-on rehabbed playscape area through Selectman actions and initiatives is being completed this month. So nice. And that's it.
Eric?
I don't have one. I have a quick mention that there is an estate planning workshop on Thursday, November 16th. Registration is tomorrow, the deadline for registration. It's gonna be from 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the old courtroom in Eno Hall. And it is where you can come and discuss what is needed to create a personal estate plan, what estate planning is, what happens when you plan ahead, and what a will can do for you. So if that is something that you are considering and you want more information, please check out that free workshop being held at Eno Hall. And registration deadline is tomorrow.
Thanks. John?
Just a quick update that we had the veterans event this past weekend. Chris, obviously were there. Thought it was a beautiful event once again, hosted by our veteran community here, well attended by our police department, our fire department, and ambulance. All received well-deserved first responder awards from the veterans in recognition for their frontline response for our community since COVID and beyond to keep us safe. And I thought it was a really touching reminder of our local heroes, in addition to the folks that have defended our country. So again, a beautiful event, and well done as always.
I have some economic development reports. The Simsbury Main Street Partnership will once again be organizing their Shop Small event on November 24th and 25th. Participating businesses will give a $10 bonus for every $50 gift card purchased during the 2 days, The list can be found at shopsimsbury.com. This event has kept over $50,000 in Simsbury during a time when most people are buying online. So be sure to go on and purchase gift cards. Also, we have some new businesses in town. We have Suburban Living, and that is a new store that opened at the Courtyard. The Weekend Home, which is a home accessories store, opened next door to Plan B. Modern Twist Makers is moving from Terrafil to 961 Hop Meadow Street, and that will be opening at the end of November. And sadly, we have lost Rue Cajun Eatery at Fiddler's Green, so it's sad to see them go. Those are our liaison reports. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have the PAC. So we have a follow-up on the PAC Life Safety Analysis year-end transfer. At our last meeting, Amy presented the fiscal year 2022-2023 year-end general fund and capital transfer requests. We did approve a few. We had asked for more information on the PAC. And do we have anyone here who would like to speak to it further? I know we had further questions.
On the screen.
Oh, hi. Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. I can't see you, but I can hear you. So in case I don't know who's speaking, I may ask. There we go.
So I believe at our meeting, last meeting in our discussion, it was something that initially we thought perhaps could move into our regular budget for next year, that could be a line item there for discussion. And then we realized that actually there might be some safety and fire safety and other sort of variables that we didn't actually think of at the time. So I don't know if any of us have any further questions, or if you have any updates to speak to that of the urgency for us to approve this.
Yeah, sure. I would just like to say, well, first of all, I just want to clarify that we do have a plan, but it's a very simple plan that was developed many years ago, specific to the Talcott Mountain Music Festival. So it doesn't include things like active shooter and very specific capacities based on the various levels of numbers of attendance that we have. And a lot of things come into consideration when you think about that. So while we advertise as a 10,000 capacity, the minute you put portalets, site services, luxury restrooms, food vendors on the field, naturally and logically, that means the capacity should go down. But we don't have the specifics with regard to all of that. In addition to that, obviously we're prepared for weather. Those are things that we're accustomed to doing. Dumping the field, if we see lightning coming, we work obviously with the emergency response professionals that are on site, and we meet with them in advance and have plans in place for that. But again, those last minute active shooters, anything unexpected, that's not something that we have the nitty-gritty details on. So in speaking with Patrick Torville, who I work very closely with, I know that from a code perspective, we want to make sure we have enough egress gates. The town was so kind to invest in fencing for access control, which has been a wonderful professional addition for the Performing Arts Center. But when you put 10,000 people in there, I'll give an example, Darius Rucker, we actually had to remove some of that fence to make sure we had enough egress. So knowing exactly how that site has to be set up in the event of an emergency is really critical. And it's always better, as I'm sure you all can agree, to be proactive than reactive. And there is a wonderful firm that we had the pleasure of interviewing by way of an RFQ that the town put out. In my previous career at the Bushnell, one of the individuals that sits on that firm was at many a conference that I went to through life safety analysis. So I can tell you firsthand that these are incredible professionals. They've done, Fenway Park and other places of the like. So I think that we would be remiss not to move forward with this as soon as possible. The last thing you want is for something to happen and to look like we are not prepared. And I think that, all of us sitting around this, me in my dining room and you at the table would agree that, the safety of the community is critical and the venue is a critical community asset. So I strongly advocate for this to move forward and for us to allocate the necessary funds.
So Missy, I agree with you. The problem is the sticker shock, $50,000 when I assume the public gathering permit process tells you the number of egress needed. I mean, because again, as you articulate, well, you did, you said that you opened up as a result of that process, so somebody told you how much egress you had to have for the Darius Rucker concert, and my struggle is paying $50,000 for a number of exits and for capacity when we have no intention of putting Darius Rucker type concerts down there again, is my understanding, is what I'm struggling with.
So, I don't know, Sean, that there's any official intention of not putting Darius Rucker type concerts. I know we've talked about limiting capacity to like an 8,000 if that happens. I can tell you that the Performing Arts Center financially will not be putting a concert of that size, but if we have a rental client, of course we will wanna entertain that.
Right, but the rental client is the one that needs to benefit from this, Missy, that's,
information. And
that's-
what I'm being told by Patrick is that it's a code issue as well. And I can't speak to code and I can't speak to emergency services. The other obviously really important item is, does the town of Simsbury, when we have a large scale concert down there, have enough resources on hand to respond if something happens and also take care of the town? So these are questions that have come up as well that need to be taken a look at. And actually it was the recommendation of Patrick that we move forward with a study of this nature.
I mean, the answer is no, we don't, but we have, I mean, there are protocols in place for the police department, the fire department, and EMS, that's how the state works.
Again, as Missy indicated, it's set on that small concert that we had. It wasn't set up for a Darius Rucker or anything else we'd wanna do. We don't have a book we can pull out and say, here's exactly what we're gonna expect or look at with these type of events. Different things could come and occur. You know, we mentioned one, weather, okay? Weather with 8,000 people versus 20,000 people is a whole different bus. You know, we have that quick little, boy, we put them in Eno Hall. Eno Hall won't support that.
No.
What's our plan next? We don't have anything like that written that we can bring both to the promoter of the concert, nor that we can bring to our public agencies in town to make those plans and move forward with.
I guess what I struggle with is the reality of those plans are we can't handle it, right? I mean, you're not gonna be able to house 20,000 people in a weather event. And what I'm struggling with is the benefit to the community, whereas this plan benefits the promoter. This plan does not benefit the town of Simsbury nor the PAC. It promotes the for-profit entity from holding a for-profit event down there, and I'm struggling with the taxpayers bearing the cost
Well, actually,
of that event.
the study would be for the protection of those people, not so much for the promoter.
But again, we don't need to have those events
Follow it
down
to
there.
make sure those safeguards are in place.
There's no reason for the town of Simsbury to hold a 10,000 person event. The only reason to hold a 10,000 person event is for the promoter to make money. The town of Simsbury is not in the business of promoting 10,000 person events. We got out of that business. We created a 501c3 and got it off the Board of Selectmen. So what I'm struggling with is why is it the town's responsibility to help someone else make money? A promoter should be paid for this.
John, with all due respect, the town owns the facility.
Correct, and we can shut down these concerts.
So if something bad happens at the facility and people die, and we haven't had plans in place to prevent that from happening, and we haven't educated ourselves accordingly, and we're being told by emergency services personnel like Patrick that this is something we need to have, I think your insurance company and the lawyers that are fighting against you are probably gonna have.
Missy, with all due respect, everybody in this room has signed off on public gathering permits without this plan, so I don't like fear mongering. And you're the one hosting the event, so please refrain from the fear mongering, okay? You willingly held a 10,000 person event down there without this plan, not the Board of Selectmen. You did. So we need to be very careful with our words here. We could remove the ability to have any concert down there if it's that much of a public safety concern.
So, a couple of questions just to take it a different direction, not ignoring. I need some water, holy cow, I'm drinking water tonight. So Patrick, thank you for your comment. Missy, thank you for bringing to you've been stepping in tonight, excuse me. So Patrick, we have a plan in place. I imagine that has not necessarily evolved along the lines to the intensity of the events that are potentially could be held there, right? It's in place for what we all knew the Performing Arts Center did 20 years ago.
It was designed for the Talking Mountain music.
To the Talking Mountain music. So is there a size event right now that you're comfortable, I'm not gonna hold it to you, but is there like a number of people that you think you're comfortable executing under the plan that you all, the chief, have in place?
Yeah, well, to come into the code says 6,000 attendees or more, then that life safety evaluation is required. Or it can be required.
Okay.
So at that point, that's where we are hosting events that are that large. So during some of our planning, especially Darius Rucker, we were having meetings regularly because we didn't have the proper plan in place. Sean, your question two is, we actually did ask them if they would provide us with their plan, which did not work. Because the event's supposed to have it done. The actual, venue is supposed to have it, as well as them to work with it as well.
So how did we safely hold that event then?
Well, a lot of meetings and a lot of time on our behalf. The police department, ambulance, Missy and her group, we were meeting with those people regularly.
So
And they were changing regularly too,
was a
because they
safe
had the
event.
advantage to do that.
But it was a safe event.
In the long run, yes, nothing happened, nothing occurred, and we
That's
did
not-
it
but
with
that's
all
not
the
what I meant.
safe.
We signed
safety
off on a
we did.
permit saying it was going to be a safe event, correct? So it was a safe event from the professionals that signed off on that permit. Because that permit shouldn't have been signed off on if it was not a safe event. That's true.
And it was down to the last minute.
But I'm not trying to be a pain,
And it was down to the
there
last
shouldn't have been
minute.
signatures on there if that was not a safe event, right? I mean, that's what the public gathering process is for. So what I'm hearing is we shouldn't be signing off on a public gathering process on more than 6,000 events until a plan like this is in place. Is really what you're saying, right?
That's what the state statutes are telling you. So Missy, how many events in the next year, or how many planned events do you have that anticipate more than 6,000 people of the total events you have planned?
So every year, the Talcott Mountain Music Festival Celebrate America with fireworks always anticipates upwards of 10,000 people.
Okay, so of the number of planned events right now in the calendar, you've only got one of those planned that is gonna exceed the 6,000? Is that?
Yeah, unless at least for next year. Obviously, I don't have any rentals on the books next year that are looking to bring in a big name that's 8,000. That could change in the next couple months or so I can't guarantee that. But with respect to what Patrick's saying, every year we do have Talcott, and Talcott's a big one, and the Celebrate America brings people not only to the site, but outside of the site, which can be problematic as well. So there's a couple of different things that come into play here.
So how will we host that event this year? Because this is not gonna be completed by then. And that's gonna be more than 6,000. So based on what everybody's telling me here, we shouldn't have more than 6,000.
We can limit to 6,000, or we can come up with plans that will allow us to address certain issues, to address that number of people.
Then why are
Again,
we paying
taking up our
50 grand for a
resources
plan?
and
That's what I'm-
times to do so, as we did with the Darius Rucker concert.
Yeah, can I jump in on how I'm looking at this? The Performing Arts Center, exists, and we support the Performing Arts Center financially because it adds to and supports the quality of life of our residents. And I've seen the Performing Arts Center increasingly become a more professional venue over my time here, through many investments that we've made, and this is another investment I think we need to make in order to make it the professional venue that it is, and it is a public safety issue. I believe that we've been able to do this safely and successfully, but I think this is yet another tool to bring in an outside perspective to make sure that these events are done successfully and safely. And I would support that we move forward with that tonight.
How long would an analysis actually take if it was approved tonight?
Showed us that timeline last time, right? It's not, they need the season to do the analysis because that's what the money.
Oh, through the season,
They've
that's
gotta
what they
be on
needed
site,
before.
right? They've gotta
Yeah.
observe, they gotta.
So
So we wouldn't
along-
get this plan until the season's over, which is my concern with if suddenly we have a 6,000 and above concern, we're now gonna be another season without a plan.
We have it's very possible that this report comes back and tells us we have to spend money, which is also quite ironic, correct? Exactly.
It's just like a
Exactly.
staffing, it's just like a
Right.
staffing
So we're not,
study.
so we're not talking about stopping at
Exactly what
$50,000, right? And
No.
that's not a reason not to do it. I'm just saying we have to also, Mr. Looney, when he comes in, he's gonna vote for that. Or not, potentially. The thing is, the things to think about. So what about not charging a ticket surcharge over the coming season that goes directly for the payment of the study? $1 per ticket, that one $10,000, 10-person event for $1. Ooh, what's the math? $10,000.
I mean, we can't change the contract down the mid-season.
They-
We're already in a contract.
They can amend the ticket price. The ticket price is to
I can't amend
us.
the ticket price for the Harvard Symphony, we're in a 5-year contract as well.
Okay, so the rest of the events or whatever, but you can't amend because we're not charging them. We're charging the attendees. I'm trying to get creative in the way that you do this, okay? We're all used to fees. If the people on there who attend see the line item that says this is going towards a life safety study that potentially pays the town back or whatever, I'm trying to get us through to a solution. Because
So when this was initially approved for 15,000, was that just, how did it so miss the mark? Is it?
That was a number that was given to us by another contractor that would start the process. We knew that it would go, but again, financially, where do you start? You have a starting point. That was gonna be our starting point for that, to address some of the major issues, to get the plan moving and then develop it and fund it as you went.
Okay, so it sounds like to me until this, another way to look at it is that until you've already signed the contract, but until you had the study done, you limit the one event to 6,000 people.
Yep. We're here tonight.
And again, we're stuck on that numbers. The numbers isn't just what this study is giving you. It doesn't give you an occupant load for what you can have for people there. It does so much more for life safety as well. The impact on the community
No doubt.
for during all that, but that's also in that study in the background. We seem to be emphasizing a lot on the number on the field.
I am
which
because
does have
you
impact.
brought that's the trigger point, that's what state statute says you have to have in place.
And then that triggers liability, which, as I was lectured on from an insurance standpoint, if we're signing off on public gathering permits that are exposing the town to liability, we shouldn't be signing off on public gathering permits that expose the town to liability. So I would strongly suggest that the new board not agree to anything that exposes the town to this newfound liability that we're hearing tonight.
Well, isn't it the difference between having a plan and a document that you can point to saying here is the plan of action as opposed to having one-off plans? I mean, I think what we're hearing from Patrick is that these events are safe. The Talcott Mountain Music Festival is safe because they spend the time doing what they need to do to make sure that that event is safe, but it's done in this one-off kind of way as opposed to being able to say, we have a written documented plan, right? I mean,
That's correct.
I don't know that you can say just because you don't have the plan that the event is therefore not safe. It's just,
You're out of compliance
It's-
with the
well,
regulation.
but I guess that's different. I mean, it still sounds like you're doing what you need to do to make sure that the event is safe.
We do, and one thing that's crucial too is when you talk to insurance and stuff like that, you gotta make sure you're talking an outdoor venue versus an indoor venue.
Agreed.
That helps us greatly, when we're looking at this. Otherwise, you could probably almost double that number if you went to an indoor.
I mean, I asked this question last time, I'm sorry, being an insurance nerd. I thought we asked Bob D this question though, but I mean, Missy, do you know if we have a claimable event, let's not talk about someone's health, but some claimable event, that you guys claim against a carrier for, and if we don't have the life safety event study done, does that become the ability for a declination from the carrier to support any claim that the PAC makes against them? Do you have any idea on that? We asked Bob, I mean, that's a question, right?
That should be answered before this goes to the Board of Finance.
So I would think it would definitely makes it harder for us, whether or not it's sufficient to declare
Right, I don't know
a
that,
declination, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it certainly makes it more difficult not to have that plan in place. And Tom, you have a comment?
And like Missy alluded to, we do have a plan in place. Does it need a lot of work? By all means.
Right.
And that's where this conversation started.
I have a question,
So our on top of being a fantastic budget director, she's also a great risk management director. So Melissa reached out to Karma on this because you had questions at your last meeting. And her email was, I don't know how to read it besides just reading her whole email. But that there's no exclusion on the policy that would prevent coverage, depending on a scenario. But Karma would expect us to have a contract in place confirming that we are not responsible for the liability of the PAC events, which we do. And one thing that we did not consider that they brought up is that if we have a legal capacity number, and an event's attendance exceeds that, a plaintiff could make a potential claim through a lawsuit. However, it would not limit coverage under our policy.
Thank you for doing that follow-up, Tom.
My other question I had was, when you do one of these studies, then if we change the PAC and add the bathrooms on and add these other, do we have to do it again? Because now it's a new venue.
Yep.
We actually brought that up during the interview process, saying that, could that be included? It wasn't a large increase to the building, and while they were doing it during that time, it was a year period. We were assuming that, that could be possibly already underway. So it was brought up in there. I'm not sure if they put it into their proposal or not. I didn't get to see the final copy, but if they did, it was discussed.
Alright, so I move effective November 13th to transfer $35K from the general fund to the CNR fund for the PAC life safety analysis and to amend the motion from the October 23 meeting to reduce the transfer, apparently I got my math wrong, from the general fund to the capital reserve fund from $3,295,100 to $3,260,100.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion?
Discussion, sorry.
I would just say for discussion points, I think we should look to explore how to pay that back to us through a ticket surcharge going forward. You gotta start getting creative with that, with stuff like this. Because we know that I support you, Patrick. But we know that this study is gonna come with a cost.
It's a cost of doing business. I mean, and it needs to be taken into account, and it's probably gonna come with additional costs down the road. And it's something that I think you'll just have to factor in.
With that being said, these events in our town bring in people who go to our restaurants and spend money in our town, and our residents come out and spend money as well.
I agree, this is a philosophical thing because we got out of this business. We give the facility and our intent was to get out of this business entirely. And now we're back in this business through this, and I agree, we should always prioritize life safety. But the town got out of the business of doing these for a reason. So I'll support this tonight, but in the future and the changes ought to be borne by the folks that are putting on these events and the promoters, et cetera. This is not a residential cost as I see it.
Anyone else have any discussion points?
No, I do think, I think that a number of us for a number of years, I've been very vocal, Missy, I'm trying to get that place completed. I'm not anymore, but I think most of us want to complete that project. We don't need another, like I said, another Simsbury Farms ice skating rink with no roof on it. We don't need a Latimer Lane with a corridor to nowhere. We don't need the path with, no bathrooms. It's an embarrassment. So I think we all support, this is be another example of us supporting the PAC and its completion. But I think we get creative moving forward with some funding. So my sermon's done.
Yeah. A bigger solution. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? And no abstentions.
Thanks for
That passes 5-0.
Thank
Thank you, Missy, for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging there,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you, Missy.
Good job.
And we now move on to back to the, okay, so next up is the proposed ordinance on prohibiting the use of tobacco, vaping, and cannabis products on public property. We have a few options for this evening. And we did just have our public hearing, so we were able to hear from a few residents on this, and I know we received some emails as well. So the Board of Selectmen has two options for action regarding the ordinance on prohibiting the use of tobacco, vaping, and cannabis products on public property, depending on whether or not the board needs additional time to consider public comment received at the hearing. So we have option A, which is to further consider public comment received at the hearing, and to table the action until a future date. And B would be for us to take action this evening. And with that, we obviously, if we take action this evening, we have a few options to consider when it comes to the golf course and which, if all products are in there. One of the things that we did learn is that if we decide to approve, for instance, one of the controlled substances but decide to take others off, that does not require another public hearing.
It does not.
No.
Does not, that's
Does not.
correct.
So we can reduce the scope but not increase the scope.
That's correct.
So we can make it less restrictive. That's good news. Excellent. So hearing that, I'll start it off.
There's a lot for me.
It does.
Okay.
It actually, I think we can probably get something done tonight then. Everybody's been hanging in with us for a long time on this one. So after considering this, I think we went a little bit too far in the sense of all public space. And I'm not sure when we set out, we meant to talk about sidewalks, we meant to talk about abutting open space to somebody's property that no public has access to. I'm not sure that's really what we meant. And I think we might wanna consider reducing this down to cannabis only at this point. And then, because there seems to be very little pushback in the space of the community on that. In the sense of cannabis openly on public grounds such as the building and the grounds here, parks and or open space that the public is congregating on. Again, I'm not sure that, again, we should be in the business of regulating sidewalks. I know they're the towns, but it is the law in Connecticut that you can consume this product, and I'm not sure that we had set out intending to essentially ban it from the four walls of Simsbury, but for the privacy of your own home, in my opinion. And I think that would move us further, and if there is a continued groundswell, or if there is continued support to review the vaping and tobacco issue, and perhaps other issues of, as Joan and others have brought up, that could be considered further, but at least cannabis ban on public property in terms of, again, building the immediate areas around, public buildings, and playgrounds and parks and such might be a good first step here. Just throwing that out for some additional perspective.
So I agree. I was actually prepared to vote no on this tonight because I think with any ordinance, we need to be clear on what problem we're solving. And in my experience and in the experience of others I've spoken with as we've gone through this process, I don't think public smoking is a big problem in Simsbury. It occurs, but I don't know if it occurs to the point where it impacts the quality of life to the extent that we need an ordinance to tell people that they can't do it. And then it becomes problematic for me when we then create carve-outs, because I think in a somewhat arbitrary way, we're creating winners and losers, and there's probably other carve-outs we could also consider. It becomes easier for me if we limit the scope to just banning the use of cannabis in public spaces and without any carve-outs. So that's where my mind is at.
I think that it's we don't have the other variables of the golf course and public town employees who actually go outside to have a cigarette. So that would be something that I think we need to look at and consider further. That being said, I do believe that these are controlled substances. These are things that affect our residents who it harms our residents who are making the healthy choice, but they're being harmed by the choice of others. And I think, you know, the example it sets for our children, and when you look at the effects of cigarette smoking, from secondhand smoke, it is alarming. And I just think, so personally, I am in favor of lumping them all together in some capacity. I just think in some ways we need to go back to the work because I understand the effects of it could be on the golf course and what they're doing, and it just there are other variables right now that I think we need to look at further.
So I mean, we are creating, if we speak to cannabis only, we are creating a carve out.
Mhm.
Which is exactly the opposite of what some of my fellow board members, I just wanna point that out. I am in favor of a ban entirely, because I just, I think that's the direction I was going, until tonight's discussion, and I just want people to know that. Because it's carve out, no carve out, again, then you're discriminating to a certain extent, and be clear and be concise and solve whatever you're trying to solve for with the intent of the measure. Let's also go back, although it was left off by proclamation, it was also on the wildlife feeding ordinance as well.
Yeah, that was a good
and
one.
the short-term rental ordinance as well. I point that out because they are ordinances, okay? We go down this path with ordinances because they are pliable living documents and you can adjust as you evolve in your thinking and your experience. So that's one thing always to consider about this ordinance, I'd bring to folks. It is an interesting conversation on narrative, though, that we're talking about this with the backdrop of culture, parks, and recreation is sort of the conversation point in the golf course. So if we're talking about culture, parks, and recreation, which recreation sort of, and all of those things that's mind and body health. And so taking a stand to say it's okay to smoke in this instance is sort of, to me, especially on property that is for health and activity, is kind of contradictory. That's an odd thing to me. No one's talking about chasing someone down who's smoking on a sidewalk. I get that. I don't know what creature lives that would be smoking at Rotary Park and think that that's not bizarre or odd or not necessarily socially acceptable. But we're not here to legislate for those people. But I think that we are in town hall here, and I don't think smoking should be allowed on town hall property. It's a cost to the taxpayers. There's a talk that although people pay a tobacco cost in their health insurance, there's unintended costs to our employees who do choose to use nicotine products, any sort of health products. And that is a cost that the town does bear to a certain extent. We see heart and hypertension claims that we are paying on. Now, who knows what those are related to, but they're likely from lifestyle choices, because there is a cost to taxpayers. Could be my last sermon, folks. I am though, so in the evolution, we came here because of cannabis. We got to this point, I think this conversation has been evolved because of cannabis. And I appreciate the direction in which Sean and Eric brought that forward, and I can get behind that being the starting point because it's an ordinance, and then moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if we limit the scope of this to cannabis, and then also limit the actual physical scope of where the ordinance applies to trails, parks, or I guess parks, playgrounds, and government buildings, and not include sidewalks, and I assume we're not gonna include trails? I don't know.
Continue.
I guess that is.
it's kind of bizarre. A trail is for health, recreation, and activity. So if you're making a stand.
Well, I think but I think a sidewalk, it seems different to me than a park, a playground, a government building or
Oh, no,
trail.
I agree, I
So
said,
so like I think we could look at the scope of it and I would support limiting this to cannabis, and there is nothing that would stop the board from continuing to look at this issue if they wanna expand this again to tobacco down the road. But I don't like the carve out for the golf course because I do think carve outs are problematic. So that's why I guess as a compromise, I see limiting, starting with a targeted, focused ordinance that is more specific, doesn't take any of the other things that are in this draft off the table. All it just means you can address those if they continue to be an issue that you feel like needs to be addressed later on.
Yeah, I agree, and then there's also an enforceability issue is we have a community police department and I don't want the police department being called because somebody walks to the end of their driveway with a cigarette and walks over to their neighbor's house. That should not be something that the police department is being tasked with enforcement, and when did they touch public property and when did they walk back? That doesn't seem to make sense to me, nor is that a good usage of public resources. If somebody's down on a playground, I think that's a little bit more black and white, and I think we would all agree to Chris's point, that's not socially acceptable behavior. You're exposing kids, et cetera. It's a very different scenario, but I don't want the police department being tied up, much like we talked about with the wildlife ordinance, Chris, of nuisance calls, and suddenly neighbors are fighting with neighbors and we're moving away from community policing, and I assume the chief doesn't want his officers tasked with that type of $250 ticket. Which doesn't, again, seem to be congruent with how we do community policing here. So again, I offer the compromise if we would do the following. In the purpose section of the first ordinance, we would remove the following. So this ordinance prohibits the use of cannabis products. So we would strike the use of, we would use tobacco, and vaping would be stricken from the draft. We would continue with products on all public property owned and or controlled by the town of Simsbury, including trails, parks, playgrounds, and government buildings. And we would add the following: this would not apply to sidewalks. In the second section, scope, we would make the same change to the first section, and this includes all property that is open to the public, removing sidewalks such as trails, parks, playgrounds, and government buildings, and again, this would not apply to sidewalks. We would remove under the definition section tobacco product. We would remove under the definition section vaping product. As long as the cannabis product would include the vaping of cannabis, I presume it does. Because it says nicotine, yes. Alright, so that would be sufficient. So we would strike the first two definitions, leaving the final two definitions. And then we would remove in section 4, again, obviously the title, use of tobacco, vaping, and cannabis, amend that to cannabis products on public property. And in the first sentence, consume cannabis products, we would strike tobacco. And then in the third sentence, we would strike tobacco. In the fifth section, we would strike that entire section unless we were, because we've already addressed sidewalks above, so there is no exception for the golf course. Cannabis would, so just to be clear, cannabis would be banned on the golf course under my proposal.
Yes.
Violations and penalties would stand, appeals would stand, severability would stand.
I think the
Did I miss any?
thing on section 4 is in that second sentence, we struck tobacco or cannabis products of any kind or use an electronic nicotine or cannabis delivery system. I think
So
we would
strike
strike electronic nicotine and or it would be an electronic cannabis delivery system.
So yeah,
So
so
that would
strike
address the
nicotine.
vaping.
Yep.
We would take the nicotine out.
Correct, so that additional amendment of striking nicotine and the word or. And then and we would leave a vaping product of any kind in the third sentence. Or the form or manner of no, we would strike vaping product of any kind, and then we would strike manner of ingestion of tobacco only, so the word tobacco in that sentence.
I'm sure, Tom, you captured all that, right?
He's got it.
For the recording.
So just to be clear, we're striking any mention of tobacco, we're striking any mention of vaping in the sense of tobacco
Or nicotine.
or nicotine, and we're striking the exception for the golf course, and we are adding an exception for sidewalks to not be an exclusionary zone for the usage of cannabis products. And to be clear, when we say trails, I wanna be, because we're gonna get into this after the fact.
Semantics.
So trails means trails in the sense of woods. So
Recreation.
sidewalks, yes, so sidewalks and or multi-use trail.
For the intention of recreational purposes or something like that.
So in the purpose section, when you said this does not include sidewalks and multi-use trail?
Well, so here's the problem, because I know what Heather's gonna ask me, so Iron Horse is a multi-use trail and I don't want it there, but along the side of Firetown is a multi-use trail because of the width, because it's a different definition, it's not a sidewalk, or excuse me, not Firetown, Old Farms. That's actually a multi-use trail, right, because of the width of it, whereas that's like a sidewalk, right? Is that where you're wrong?
I'm not really understanding why we're carving out the sidewalks.
Because we shouldn't be having the police give you a ticket when you walk to the end of your driveway to your neighbor's house. Is what I'm saying.
Well, we're talking about a joint at this point. We're talking about cannabis, we're not talking about a cigarette.
It's still legal in the state of Connecticut.
It is.
Again, you can talk me out of it, but again, that's not public gathering, that's not, you're not infringing on your neighbor's space because you walk next door. If your neighbor invited you over, that's what maybe I'm trying to split too many atoms here, but.
It's becoming problematic where we can't smoke on that trail, but we can smoke on the
On the
you know,
sidewalk.
what about the West Street sidewalk, is that a trail? It's just
Well, that's
difficult.
what
The last grade compromise, so sidewalks are back in.
And it's not because I want people, it's because it's
Yeah,
getting.
it does get messy.
You're right, sidewalks are back in. So Tom, strike the strike for sidewalks. So includes all property that is open to the public, such as sidewalks, trails, parks, playgrounds, and government buildings. So we're putting that back in.
I'm also, I don't know, I'm still going back with I'm concerned, there is a part of me that's concerned that if we just do the cannabis, that we don't ever circle back to the rest of it, and as you said, it's another.
That's on you.
I
That's
know
on you.
that, I'm aware of that.
That's why it's an ordinance.
But the,
I
there's just so much research that if you, that if you say no smoking in town, it decreases, the use decreases quite a bit.
So Heather, I don't, a full smoking ban isn't gonna pass tonight based on the conversation that I'm hearing. My advice is if you agree with the ordinance, if you agree with banning cannabis, we vote for that tonight and then it's up to you to promote that on the new board.
Okay.
And I think it's, don't let perfect be the enemy.
Yeah.
Good.
And if you, Heather, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think the reason why we're here is because of cannabis. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Until cannabis entered into the public dialogue about decriminalization of it and recreational, we would never even have this, right? So I'm with you, I'm closer with you as far as what I would like to see accomplished for the greater good, so to speak. But I think when this is the reason why we're here is because of cannabis and as it presented itself into our lives now. The townspeople voted, they didn't want retail sale in the town of Simsbury. I think we're continuing along that thread of what we're trying to address, which is their concerns around cannabis, which is really so let's move forward on it here, and then again, if this issue continues to evolve and at some flashpoint in either direction, either it lessens or it increases towards to address smoking, then future boards address it.
So to that end, I will move effective November 13th, 2023 to adopt the amended ordinance on prohibiting the use of cannabis products on public property as amended, which shall be effective 21 days after publication in a newspaper having circulation within the town of Simsbury. I further move to authorize a summary of the adopted ordinance be published.
I'll second it.
Go ahead, Amber, please.
Oh, thank
work.
you. Thanks. I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No abstentions. So that passes 5-0.
Okay.
Next up, we have item number, letter C. That is the proposed amendments to chapter 15 of the Simsbury Town Code Fair Rent Commission. So here, we just had a public hearing on this, and so if we vote to support the Fair Rent Commission rules of procedures as presented, then we can make a motion. We can discuss further from the updates we had last meeting. I'm uncertain, Lee, if you have anything to add to any of it, the information we've received.
I do not, just for clarification, item C is the amendments to the current ordinance. Item D is the proposed revision to the rules of procedure. So two different actions needed tonight if we want to move forward with that, which we would recommend.
So I'll make a motion to move effective November 13th, 2023 to adopt the proposed revisions to the Fair Rent Commission rules of procedure.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No abstentions?
I'm gonna go back to item C, just adopted item D.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we did the rules of procedure.
I got through too far through the draft.
It's okay.
Okay. So here, we have move effective November 13th, 2023 to adopt the proposed amendments to chapter 15 of Simsbury Town Code Fair Rent Commission as presented, which shall be effective 21 days after publication in a newspaper having circulation within the town of Simsbury. Further, move to authorize a summary of revised ordinance to be published.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Can we have discussion real quick?
Oh, discussion?
Yeah. So just, I struggle with this one. What the hell is fair? Life is not fair. And this is gonna be a voluntary commission that arbitrarily decides with really no expertise, no background, and no comprehension of the free market, what rent should be. It's a nice concept to protect people, but all this commission is gonna do is render biased decisions based on factors that may or may not have anything to do with market rent and other factors. And again, it's well intentioned, but the only reason this is coming up is because the legislature is getting flack that the market is going up because of exactly what we're seeing. There's not enough housing stock, and this isn't gonna make things fair. Because it's gonna screw over the business owners that are renting these properties. They can't pay the taxes, can't pay the utilities that we heard come in here and tell us how expensive it is. They can't pass on the increases that they're seeing to their renters. And I get that it's a frustrating folks. I pay rent and it's hard, but at the same time, we're picking winners and losers between renters and business owners that both live in Simsbury. For the most part, right? That's, we're not penalizing some far off entity for the most part here.
Well, my understanding of how this works, first of all, other towns have these commissions. This is not something unique to Simsbury.
Don't disagree.
This is, so there are,
Just because it's dumb doesn't mean we should do it though.
right, but my point is I think there are standards and there are statutes that inform. I don't think that the people that serve on this commission, there are plenty of people in this town that are educated, that understand how leases and landlord tenant law works. I'm sure with our volunteers and the work that we have all kinds of people that are experts and that serve on all kinds of boards and commissions, and we would be able to find people that I think could do a competent job on this commission. And I also think that part of what they're doing is in some sense a type of mediation. And my understanding is that a lot of this work is happening now. It's just being done by Kristen at Social Services. And what the formation of this commission is going to do is provide more of a framework and some more resources so that one of our town staff person isn't spending our time mediating landlord tenant issues. And I think to that extent, that is a benefit that this commission can provide. And it isn't necessarily to pick a winner and a loser. Sometimes just presenting your case to an impartial group can kind of help a dialogue. It can help alleviate difficult conversations between landlords and tenants and hopefully resolve the issue as she has been doing already.
So I agree with you in theory, but I mean, the frequency and amount of increase, I mean, that's one of the stipulations. What does that have to do with anything? If your utilities go up every year, then your rent has to go up every year. Again, the income of the petitioner, again, why is that the landlord's problem? It's a free market society. It's the
I think it would depend on.
These are arbitrary factors that should have nothing to do with market rent.
Well, I mean, I feel like we're in the weeds of exactly what this commission is gonna do, and I don't know that I know enough to be able to say for sure what they're looking at, but to me, I mean, landlord tenant, it is governed first and foremost by your lease agreement. And I'm not sure, but
That's my
depending
point.
on what the agreement is, depending on what type of perhaps other types of housing subsidy you have, some of these other factors may be relevant as opposed to just a true market rate rent. I mean, I don't know,
I agree, but most of these are gonna be, I'm pissed my landlord raised my rent 15%, but I live in a $3,000 a month rental, and I mean, that's what we're gonna be inundated with, cause that's most of the rental properties in this town.
Yeah, I wonder, Amber.
Well, but I think there can also be a lot of health safety issues with, I know people that have had issues with that the tenants feel like they need someone to be able to go to say, I don't think this rental property is safe, or I have
That's the
concerns.
building department.
Hold on, so that's where I think, just to give you a break, maybe before, so you're helping me with my thoughts. So there's a difference, I think Kristen is probably overloaded, right?
Yes.
Because she has people coming to her like she's never had before going, what do I do? Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's necessarily a situation where that's an affordability issue. And I don't know that the landowner addressing their costs is unfair. Because the landowner has a problem. Okay, so the landowner has their problem, right?
But this says they can.
Okay, so maybe we don't know what we're doing. Maybe it's really going back and because you're right, Amber, is this committee or was responsible housing committees where they adopted back when people where landlords were abusive of tenants because of the quality of living, the quality of living, the environment, the safety and whatnot. And I don't know that we have that problem. I don't think we have that. I hope we don't have that problem. But if we do, I hope it's that's definitely being taken care of by Kristen and or our building department. But if this is really about affordability overall, and we're responding to Kristen, God bless her needs for help, then that's something different.
Yeah,
Then
I'll play ball if that's what it is, but
John, were
again.
you at I can't remember if you were at our last meeting, Cause I'm asking because the takeaway that I got was that Kristen's office has really been inundated with a
Yeah, and
significant
I'm
number of
remembering that
these.
now, and again, as I get into this, it's just philosophically, this doesn't work for me, but I understand it from that standpoint.
We could
That makes sense.
make a motion to table it and address the draft and some of these bullet points.
I'm not sure we can because Lee, these are set by statute, right? Or did we come up with these bullet points?
No, they're set by statute, and
Right.
keep in mind again that once we hit the magic threshold of
We have to have it
25,000
anyway.
population,
Do this.
which
We have
we
to
will
have it.
before long, we will have to have this in place.
So basically, it's the clown car at the state that's done a bad job once again and we're stuck with it, so.
Mhm.
Alright, I'll get out of the way, it's just all this opens up to is subjective fairness, which again, these poor volunteers are not gonna be able to execute on.
Okay, so in keeping in discussion though, is it possible that we, with the next board should, I mean, as part of the goal setting for the next board, is sit down with Kristen
Yeah.
and say, what, tell me about your problems. Tell me what you're experiencing as it relates to housing, just to make sure that we're potentially feathering in as part of initiatives, things that possibly could be added, if there are things that we're missing that aren't in this, that this organization can take a part of, or be very clear about what this organization can't do for you.
So I'll play ball tonight, I'm not gonna stand in the way, it's just, but again, it's another misguided state law that is not gonna affect the outcome that it wants to. And I think we're
It's
not,
coming anyways.
we're not doing the damage, but again, I think to the comments earlier, public audience, I think, other Simsbury residents are gonna be punished by an excessive use of this commission. And I think the next board needs to make sure that advocacy of what actually happens needs to go to the state. Much like my feedback on 830G is bad state laws need to get fixed to solve real problems.
Well, they push it down on the municipalities to fix.
Right.
And then it's being fixed by volunteers.
Right, and again, what is fair, but anyway, let's vote on it, I'm sorry.
Okay. So I'll reread the motion, move effective November 2023 to adopt the proposed amendments to chapter 15 of Simsbury Town Code, Fair Rent Commission as presented, which shall be effective 21 days after publication in a newspaper having circulation within the town of Simsbury. Further move to authorize, we already did the second part.
Yes.
Yeah. So we had a motion and a second.
So moved. Or did you make the motion?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No. No abstentions. Skip over the one.
Positive, happy stuff right here.
Tax refunds are happy.
No, F, I was skipping over that.
We'll get past this one, okay. And next we have tax refund requests. So move effective November 2023 to approve the percentage tax refunds in the amount of $7,949.48 and to authorize interim town manager Lee Erdman to execute the tax refunds.
So moved.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Any nays?
I wanted to do it once. Still passes.
And that passes
Less
4-1.
than we told that, we ended up having to delay the bleacher project 2 years.
That was different. That was not my fault. You and I should have partnered on that, oops.
So our next one, we have a donation from Diane and Mark Ornstein. So move effective November 2023 to accept a donation from Diane and Mark Ornstein in the amount of $1,800 for the purpose of supporting Simsbury Community and Social Services Department programs.
With our thanks, I'll move that.
Yes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
thank you.
Passes 5-0. Next we have a public gathering permit. This is to move effective November 2023 to approve the public gathering application on behalf of the Simsbury Performing Arts Center and to authorize the issuance of the public gathering permit for the charity walk and talk at the PAC.
Move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No discussion?
Any nays, discussion?
I was gonna say just as long as no more than 5,999 people.
I read the application.
It was a very
It's a small
number.
one.
It was a small amount.
Very
You
small.
think I was gonna let that go?
Just going on record.
Yeah,
So-
The next one doesn't have more than that either, Chris.
No, scrolling to it. Okay. Oh, this is a nice event. Move effective November 13th, 2023 to approve the public gathering application on behalf of For All Ages Incorporated to authorize the issuance of the public gathering permit for the Unite by Light along Hop Meadow Street.
Move that.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And next we have,
Resignation.
oh, the resignation of Peterson. And move retroactive to November 6th, 2023 to accept the resignation of Elizabeth Peterson as a regular member of the Technology Task Force.
I'll move that with our thanks.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Passes 5-0. Do we have any amendments to our meeting minutes? I do. Have one. So, under our liaison reports, when I reported on the Simsbury Main Street Partnership, it says that they discussed their best year yet, which was not what was said. They actually, the Taste of Simsbury event was their most successful year yet. So that needs to be noted that it was an event, the Taste of Simsbury.
We pass it with that change.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to adjourn.
Oh, I just would like to make one quick, I just wanted to make the public aware that the organizational meeting for the new Board of Selectmen will take place on December 4th at Eno Hall at 6 p.m. So we just wanted to make that note.
Now I move to adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.